Chapter 76. The following things naturally became simpler. Except for the addition of a dumbfounded future Lucy and the loss of a future rogue full of ambition and conspiracy, everything was not much different from the original. After encouraging the morale of the wizards in the Wizard Guild as per international practice, Princess Emerald did not waste any more time and directly chose to open the Eclipse Gate, which had accumulated magic power for 7 years. The gate, which was tens of meters high, slowly opened, revealing a misty light inside the gate. No one could reveal what the misty light was like after seeing the light. However, based on Princess Emerald's previous description, everyone subconsciously imagined that there must be a super large magic cannon in the misty light in the Eclipse Gate, which could instantly release huge magic power and kill all enemies. However, just as everyone was waiting with confidence, the eyes of future Lucy and Lucy suddenly changed at this moment, and a feeling of extreme uneasiness kept emerging from their hearts. This inexplicable feeling was something Lucy and future Lucy had never felt before. It was as if there was a voice in their hearts constantly reminding them to quickly close the gate of the Eclipse Gate. Otherwise, something terrible would happen. And future Lucy and Lucy also noticed that the bright moon above their heads had turned scarlet at some point, and the scarlet light made future Lucy and Lucy feel uncomfortable from the bottom of their hearts. The gate of the Eclipse Gate must be closed, otherwise something very bad would happen. This was the thought that future Lucy and Lucy had in their minds at this moment. Future Lucy and Lucy didn't know that a giant dragon would come out of the Eclipse Gate. They just simply felt that they had to close the Eclipse Gate. Just as future Lucy and Lucy were preparing to act, they were horrified to find that their bodies were imprisoned at this moment. Not only could they not move their bodies, but they couldn't even open their mouths to speak. "How can I let you two close this door like this?" After waving his hand at the future Lucy and Lucy's location to release a space confinement, Guyun looked at the completely opened Eclipse Gate and chuckled, "You know, there are many precious materials on the dragon. This time, releasing more dragons should save me a lot of trouble." Although Guyun has killed countless dragons along the way, there is one thing Guyun has to admit, that the dragons in the fairy tale world can indeed be called the darlings of the world. They are born with extremely strong bodies and extremely huge magic power, and the magic power in their bodies is much stronger than that of humans in terms of quality and top. Guyun also relied on his imagination to create a way to actively absorb magic power and refine the quality of magic power, and finally he was able to slowly hurt or even kill the dragon. Under normal circumstances, no matter how hard humans try, they can't cause even a little damage to dragons. After all, as mentioned before, in the fairy tale world, except for a few rare opportunities, the magic power of most people is fixed from birth, grows with growth, and begins to decline after reaching the peak of the body. And no matter how talented humans are, they can never compare to the dragons with powerful magic power at birth. That's why Guyun wanted to kill some dragons to see if he could get some materials he might need. After all, dragons are the best in the fairy tale world in terms of strength and other aspects. As an enemy, they are very powerful and terrifying. If they are used as materials or food, they are also very satisfactory, especially the magic crystal that condenses the essence of the dragon race. Guyun is already a little impatient to try it out. What is the difference between the magic spirit power extracted from the dragon magic crystal? Just like that, in the horrified eyes of everyone except Guyun, the dragon slowly appeared from the Eclipse Gate. No one expected that what emerged from the Eclipse Gate was not the Eclipse Cannon that Princess Emerald had mentioned before, but the dragons that had disappeared from the continent for hundreds of years. How could it be? Princess Emerald looked at the giant dragons that slowly came out of the Eclipse Gate one after another in front of her with a look of astonishment, and said, "Why would the dragons come out of the Eclipse Gate? That future person deceived me." Princess Emerald could never have imagined that future Rogue would deceive herself in this way, and she could not imagine what benefits future Rogue could gain by deceiving herself in this way. Of course, Princess Emerald could not have imagined that future Rogue, the future person, had already died. As the giant dragons slowly came out of the Eclipse Gate one after another, an unprecedented sense of suffocation emerged in the hearts of everyone present. "It's really scary. Is this the dragon that once dominated the world?" Makarov looked at the giant dragon that slowly walked out of the Eclipse Gate and murmured to himself with a serious face, "There are still 10,000 dragons like this. It's obvious that just one dragon makes people feel desperate. 10,000 dragons like this, even when I fought with the Black Dragon on Tianlang Island, I didn't feel this desperate." Similarly, Mavis, who had been standing next to Makarov, also regretted with a serious face at this time, "I should have thought of it a long time ago. The purpose of the Eclipse Gate is obviously to travel through time. How could it have an attack method like the Eclipse Cannon? I'm afraid this princess was deceived by someone and connected the Eclipse Gate with the era when the Dragon clan was still active. But, what is the purpose of this person doing this? Chapter 77. We must quickly view this dangerous gate. After seeing dragons slowly coming out of the open Eclipse Gate, this was the thought of everyone present except Guyun. However, the Eclipse Gate is not so easy to close after it is opened before the accumulated magic power is exhausted, unless the celestial spirit keys of the zodiac can be used at the same time to summon all the celestial spirits. However, the future Lucy and Lucy were completely imprisoned by Guyun using space magic, and the Emerald Princess, who is also a celestial spirit wizard, was in a state of trance. In this way, as more and more dragons came out of the Eclipse Gate, the army of the Kingdom of Fiori and various wizard guilds also retreated again and again, and slowly the Eclipse Gate was full of dragons. Just this moment, the number of dragons that came out of the Eclipse Gate far exceeded the 7 dragons in the original book, reaching more than 20, and as time went on, the number of dragons coming out of the Eclipse Gate continued to increase. This is a bit rare. Looking at the dragons that kept coming out of the Eclipse Gate, Guyun just let out a slight exclamation and muttered to himself, "It seems that these dozens of dragons are all gathered together, and there are not even dozens of dragons. It may be a bit exaggerated to say that there are tens of thousands of dragons, but hundreds or even thousands should be possible. Maybe because the dragon race is too favored by God, even though the dragon race has the power that other races are unlikely to get from birth, the overall number of dragons has indeed not increased. It has always maintained a number of just over 10,000, and even after Yun's massacre, the number of dragons once approached 3 digits, so when the dragons had not yet fallen 400 years ago, it was rare to see dozens of dragons or even more gathering together, even before Gu and the Black Dragon's double massacre. In addition, the dragons are really huge and it is really inconvenient to squeeze together, so if there is nothing very necessary, the dragons are usually busy with their own things and rarely gather together. If 2 or 3, 4 or 5, or even 7 or 8 get together to reminisce about the past, it is still common sense, but if dozens of them appear together, then it is a big problem. Something very important must have happened to the dragons. Gently touching his chin, looking at the dragons who kept coming out of the Eclipse Gate, Yun started to think. Where is this place? Compared to the humans who were always more sober, the dragons who came out of the Eclipse Gate were a little confused. Looking at the humans who were surrounding him and other members of his clan with vigilance, a dragon with a body as green as emerald and 2 long whiskers on his chin said in a slightly strange way, "Why are there so many humans around? Oh, there are also many beautiful girls, which really makes me drool." This dragon who looked like a pervert no matter how he looked or heard was the dragon ghost, Emerald Dragon Kilkonus, who had been chatting with Natsu, Wendy, and others in the dragon's tomb before. "Wendy. Look." Natsu naturally noticed the very eye-catching Emerald Dragon Kilkonus, and directly pulled Wendy, who was not far away, and said in surprise, "Who is this dead guy? This guy is alive again." "No, he is not dead." After hearing Natsu's surprised voice, Carla, a pure white kitten standing at Wendy's feet, said seriously, "This Emerald Dragon Kilkonus probably came from the era when he was not dead yet. The era when the Dragon clan was king and dominated the world. What should I do?" Wendy asked in panic as she looked at the situation in front of her. "Zero, please give me flowers." No matter how naive Wendy was, no matter how much she believed that the Dragon clan would not be as brutal as recorded in history, she could not help but start to panic. After all, the power between humans and dragons was too unequal. This was a kind of uneasiness that kept emerging from the bottom of her heart and from the depths of her soul. "It's over." Looking at the giant dragons that continued to emerge from the Eclipse Gate, the Emerald Princess muttered to herself with a dazed look on her face, "Because of me, the Kingdom of Fiori is over. It's all my fault." I easily believed what that person said. Just one dragon already gives people a feeling of extreme suffocation and oppression, let alone the situation where dozens of dragons appear in a group. Oh, if there are really 10,000 dragons, I am afraid that not only the Kingdom of Fiori, but even the whole world will not be able to stop Fang Long's footsteps. 0000000. Let's focus on the dragons again. Because they are not controlled by the dragon controlling, funny, magic of the future rogue as in the original book, the dragons that appeared from the Eclipse Gate did not immediately attack humans. Instead, they all looked at the humans who surrounded them with interest. In the era of 400 years ago, this situation has not occurred for a long time. When facing dragons, most humans will give up the last resistance, so that even the opposing dragons feel that playing with humans has become meaningless. Just like that strong, you have to resist to your heart's content to have fun. Kilkonus, the humans here seem very interesting. A giant dragon that appeared in the Great Demon Director Wu chapter of the original novel said to the Emerald Dragon Kirkonus not far away, "It has been a long time since I saw a human who dared to fight a dragon. Although I don't know why I appeared here, I think this place is very interesting. The humans here can become my toys." Chapter 78. It's interesting. After hearing what Mashiguria said, Emerald Dragon Kilkonus touched the two whiskers on his chin, and said with an approving look, "But there are not enough humans like this for us to share, and they can't even fill the gaps between my teeth, what?" Before he finished speaking, Emerald Dragon Kilkonus felt an inexplicable palpitation suddenly emerge from the depths of his heart, and his originally relaxed and comfortable expression suddenly froze. He had no time to react, and a sharp pain came from his body. Boom! Accompanied by a huge roar, in the eyes of everyone in shock, Emerald Dragon Kilkonus, who was just chatting and laughing with another dragon, was blown up out of thin air. The dragon that had not yet completely walked out of the Eclipse Gate was smashed back in, and then the Eclipse Gate, which had been constantly making huge noises, suddenly became quiet. The humans who were originally panicking and discussing, and the dragons who were chatting and laughing, all became quiet at this moment. Both humans and dragons looked at the scene in front of them with disbelief. Such a huge dragon that exudes such a terrifying aura was kicked away out of thin air. How is it possible? Makarov looked at the situation in front of him and swallowed his saliva subconsciously, saying, "What happened to that dragon just now? Why was it suddenly thrown up? What happened at that moment just now?" At that moment just now, someone launched an attack on the abdomen of the Emerald Dragon. At that moment, the Emerald Dragon was directly thrown up by the attack, and then the dragon that had not yet completely come out of the Eclipse Gate was smashed into it. Maybe, it was the mastermind who deceived the Emerald Princess who took action. After hearing Makarov's doubtful voice, Mavis explained with a serious face. It is estimated that among all the people present, only Mavis can barely understand what happened just now. However, after explaining to this point, Mavis herself became more confused. After all, judging from the situation just now, the mastermind who asked the Jade Princess to activate the Eclipse Gate to connect to the past time and space did not seem to simply want to put the dragons of 400 years ago into the present era 400 years later. Otherwise, the giant dragon with a green body would not be directly knocked away, and the giant dragon that had not yet come out of the Eclipse Gate would be smashed back to the era of 400 years ago. What is the purpose of this mastermind who deceived the Jade Princess? Mavis began to ponder. No matter how she thought about it, Mavis could not guess what the purpose of this mastermind was. The behavior of this mastermind was too strange and puzzling. Could it be? This guy wants to. Thinking of this, Mavis' pupils suddenly shrank, and she thought of a terrible possibility. She suddenly raised her head and looked at the slender figure with white hair that suddenly appeared in everyone's field of vision. Too slow. Guyun looked at the dozens of dragons standing in front of him, and casually cancelled the illusion magic that had been set up around him. He stretched lazily and chuckled, "Come out one by one, hurry up. Please go back and call more dragons and fly them all over at once, okay? I'm going to fall asleep if I wait this slowly." While speaking, Guyun once again knocked another dragon away in front of everyone, and smashed it into the Eclipse Gate again. Although I don't know how many dragons there are on the other side of the Eclipse Gate, there must be many more than the dragons that have appeared here. If I really have to wait slowly one by one, who knows how long it will take. It is not a good choice to kill all the dragons coming over directly. What if the dragons on the other side of the Eclipse Gate know that there is a fatal danger here and don't come? As for the era of killing directly to the other side of the Eclipse Gate 400 years ago, Guyun directly passed it. Although it is not impossible to destroy the dragon clan again, Guyun does not want to sleep for another 400 years. So, after thinking about it for a while, Guyun decided to use appropriate force to slap the dragons that came here back, so that after the continuous accumulation of anger, the dragons on the other side of the Eclipse Gate would definitely not sit still. Maybe if they were a little stupid, they would all rush over at once. In short, in order to harvest as many dragon magic crystals as possible, Guyun felt that it was necessary to wipe these dragons well. After all, they were used to being high and mighty, and it would be easy for them to explode with a little provocation. In fact, just as Guyun imagined, after the Emerald Dragon Kilkonus was knocked to the other side of the Eclipse Gate by Guyun, although the movement of the eclipse gate suddenly became quiet, a louder movement was soon heard. Who is it? In the depths of the eclipse gate, the emerald dragon Kilkonas's big head suddenly stretched out and rushed towards Guyun, roared loudly in the direction where he was. Who on earth is it? How dare you sneak attack me, Kilkonas? I will tear you apart alive. Although he didn't see who hit him, the emerald dragon Kilkonas could still feel the direction of the force that hit him, so the furious emerald dragon Kilkonas roared directly in the direction where Guyun was. After hearing the roar of the emerald dragon Kilkonas, Guyun gently scratched his ears, blew a little, and his eyes became cold. Ah! It's so noisy. Chapter 79. Since minor injuries have no effect, then a slightly heavier one will do. As Guyun finished speaking, an extremely bright sword light with a chilling aura flashed across everyone's sight. Before the people or dragons around could notice anything, the wail of the emerald dragon Kilkonas was heard. In the horrified eyes of everyone, Guyun cut off one of the arms of the emerald dragon Kilkonas, who had previously revealed an extremely terrifying aura. The huge arm fell from the eclipse gate and hit the ground, making a dull crash, and the bright red blood gushed out like a rushing river. Old man, the arm of the circle of heaven. After being stunned for a long time, the emerald dragon Kilkonas looked at the arm that fell on the ground with a horrified face, and realized what had happened. But in the same way, the emerald dragon Kilkonas finally found out who was attacking him. Looking at Guyun, who was standing not far from the eclipse gate, the emerald dragon Kilkonas was in disbelief. The emerald dragon Kilkonas would never have thought that his arm would be cut off by a mere human one day. You know, from ancient times to the present, human magic has not been able to cause any harm to the dragon race. Even the so-called forbidden magic of overdrawing vitality can only make the dragon race a little painful at most, and still cannot cause any harm to the dragon race, let alone break bones. And now? Don't say break bones, it's a direct severe injury to the limbs, which is almost unprecedented in the history of the dragon race. How is it possible? Looking at Guyun, the emerald dragon Kilkonas said in disbelief, it's just a mere human, how could it be possible to cut off my arm directly? Obviously, it's just my food. You really have no memory at all. Looking at the scene that had become quiet again, Guyun chuckled and said, don't you dragons know anything else to say except just a human, and clearly just a human? I don't know how many times I've heard such words from you. I'm tired of hearing them. As he spoke, Guyun casually snapped his fingers and used the magic power in his body to condense a huge golden magic circle in the air. The golden magic circle revealed magic that even the dragons felt frightened. To be honest, in order to catch as many fish as possible and catch as many fish as possible from the eclipse gate, it is really tiring to maintain a strength that is stronger than a single dragon or even dozens of dragons, but not to the extent that the dragons feel desperate. Considering this situation, Guyun could only abandon his high-intensity and high-attack magic, and just follow the magic of most wizards in the fairy tale world, simply squeeze the magic together and instantly form a beam of light and release it to cause bombardment. Then, the magic circle released by Yun was shining with dazzling light. An unprecedented huge beam of light came out from the magic circle in the sky, and smashed the emerald dragon Kilkonas, whose arm was broken, back again. Boom! Although the other side of the eclipse gate was the world of 400 years ago, even if it was like this, everyone and the dragon present could clearly feel that the space was constantly vibrating, and even obvious cracks appeared. Perhaps the intensity of the attack caused by simply squeezing the magic power together and releasing it all at a certain moment would be it was disappointing, but the scope of the destruction and the noise it caused were definitely fake. If someone was on the other side of the eclipse gate at this time, they would be able to clearly see a huge mushroom cloud rising up, and then a huge pit with a radius of more than 10 miles appeared. There were dragons flying in the sky, but the dragons that originally looked very scary were now in a very embarrassed state, and in the center of the huge pit with a radius of more than 10 miles, there was a half-dead green dragon lying. This half-dead green dragon was the emerald dragon Kilkonas, who was first Guyun cut off his arm with a sword, and then was blasted back by Guyun. Even the crudest means of using magic power could not withstand the high quality of Guyun's magic power. The reason why the dragons can ignore most of the magic of human wizards is not because the quality of magic power in human wizards is far inferior to that of dragons. Therefore, even if Guyun simply squeezed the magic power together and released it all at once, the magic shock wave can cause considerable damage to the emerald dragon Kilkonas. In short, the emerald dragon Kilkonas will not be able to stand up again in a short time. The situation on the Emerald Dragon Kurkonis side also completely angered those dragons flying in the sky who were embarrassed by Gu Yun's blast. It's just that the noise Gu Yun made just now was indeed a bit loud, and the Emerald Dragon Kurkonis looked a bit miserable, so for a while these dragons were still in a state of doubt. Turn your attention back to Gu Yun. Although it seemed like a long time had passed, from Gu Yun knocking the Emerald Dragon Kurkonis away to the Emerald Dragon Kurkonis coming back in anger and having his arm cut off by Gu Yun and being blown away again by Gu Yun, it was all just a short period of time. It was not until Gu Yun once again blasted the Emerald Dragon Kurkonis into the Eclipse Gate that the people present came back to their senses. Really, really terrifying. Makarov looked at Gu Yun standing not far from the Eclipse Gate and swallowed his saliva subconsciously, saying, as expected of the legendary Dragon Slayer, even if I have seen it before, it is still shocking. Chapter 80. It seems that there should be no problem. After hearing Makarov's sigh, future Lucy also breathed a sigh of relief. Thinking of the terrifying scene of Gu Yun killing 2 dragons with a sword in front of her last night, future Lucy felt inexplicably relieved. Although there may be nearly 10,000 dragons on the other side of the Eclipse Gate that have not yet come out, the Eclipse Gate is only so big for the Dragon Clan, and at most it can only allow 1 dragon to appear from the Eclipse Gate at the same time. As long as Gu Yun can quickly kill the dozens of dragons around the Eclipse Gate, then he only needs to guard the Eclipse Gate, and with the strength that can kill dragons in seconds that he showed in front of him last night, he can completely achieve a one-man defense against 10,000 men, even if there are 10,000 dragons. And as long as they can guard the gate, they don't have to kill 10,000 dragons. They can find a way to close the Eclipse Gate in advance. The only thing they need to worry about now is whether Gu Yun can deal with the dozens of dragons that have come out. If Gu Yun can't deal with the dozens of dragons that have come out, then everything is empty talk. However, judging from some historical evaluations of Gu Yun, the Dragon Slayer, and the strength and decisiveness that Gu Yun has always shown, Lucy thinks that these dragons should not be a problem for Gu Yun in the future. Even if these dragons are taken out casually, almost everyone present can be helpless. At most, Natsu, Dragneel, Wendy and other dragon slayers can barely rely on dragon-killing magic to temporarily drag a few giant dragons. If dragon-killing magic wants to become powerful, it must be bathed in dragon blood. The reason why the Black Dragon Aknologia is so powerful and completely exterminates the Dragon Clan when Gu Yun freezes himself is because it swallowed and bathed in a lot of dragon blood behind Gu Yun. No, things may not be as good as we imagined. Just when Lucy in the future was slightly relieved, Mavis, who had been thinking, raised her head and said seriously, things are even more complicated than we imagined. According to some information about the Dragon Slayer in my memory and the combat power shown by the Dragon Slayer before, the combat power shown by the Dragon Slayer just now is also very strong, but it is not actually using its full strength. Even if the Dragon Slayer's strength is what it showed just now, the attack caused by the Dragon Slayer just now is enough to destroy the Eclipse Gate. As long as the Eclipse Gate is destroyed, everything will return to its original state. However, the Dragon Slayer did not do this. Not only did he spare the Dragon Clan, he also did not choose to destroy the Eclipse Gate. The Dragon Slayer seems to be trying to anger the Dragon Clan, or the Dragon Group behind the Eclipse Gate 400 years ago. From the beginning, Mavis has been thinking about the purpose of the mastermind who misled the Emerald Princess by telling her the wrong information, and also thinking about the identity of the mastermind. Now, after seeing Gu Yun's series of strange behaviors, and the fact that the real mastermind, future rogue, had been killed by Gu Yun yesterday and had not appeared, Mavis directly pinned the identity of the mastermind who caused all these things on Gu Yun. After all, from the beginning, although Mavis did not know what Gu Yun's purpose was, she could still see that Gu Yun had a very strong purpose. He knew what he wanted to do from the beginning, or he knew that the dragon would appear from the Eclipse Gate from the beginning, and he had already made various psychological preparations. It must be said that Mavis's analytical ability is really very sharp. He can analyze the overall situation just from some very subtle details, and he is generally correct in his analysis. However, because the real mastermind, future rogue, had already knelt down to receive his lunchbox, Mavis was destined to have no way of knowing Gu Yun's purpose. What exactly is Yun's purpose? We can only analyze in increasingly remote directions. To anger the dragons behind the Eclipse Gate, which came from the world 400 years ago. After hearing Mavis' analysis, Natsu, Wendy, and Dragneel asked with a strange look on their faces, why does that guy want to anger the dragons behind the Eclipse Gate? Is he going to fight with the dragons behind the Eclipse Gate? At the same time, Natsu, Wendy, and others who had seen the dragon soul of the Emerald Dragon kill Conus in the Dragon Tomb under the Great Demon Director martial arts arena before also subconsciously realized it in their hearts. I understand why the Emerald Dragon kill Conus was so afraid of Guyun, the Dragon Slayer. According to the story told by the Emerald Dragon kill Conus at that time, the Emerald Dragon kill Conus's impression of Guyun should have always been in the state of legend, otherwise he must have died in Guyun's hands instead of in a dragon tomb. Now it seems that the reason why the Emerald Dragon kill Conus is so afraid of Guyun is that he is afraid of Guyun. It was because he was scared by Gu Chu's good Zhao in this era. After all, he was knocked away without saying a word when they met, and his hand was cut off before he could even yell, and then he was shot. It was so scary. Although I don't know what the ultimate goal of the Dragon Slayer is, it is definitely not just for fighting. We must figure out why the Dragon Slayer angered the Dragon Clan. Mavis looked at Natsu and others who were puzzled and explained seriously, perhaps the biggest problem we need to face is no longer the invasion of thousands of dragons, but how to deal with the Dragon Slayer whose purpose is unknown. Maybe, there may be a conflict of purpose between us and the Dragon Slayer. Be prepared for the Dragon Slayer to be an enemy. Chapter 81. As Mavis finished speaking, the fairy tale people, who were a little relieved, became quiet again. You should know that Guyun's strength was fully demonstrated in the last Tartaros incident. Mard. Gear, the Hades who defeated Makarov, the 10 wizard saints, in a few moves, could not survive a single move in front of Guyun. The legendary Ziref could not survive a few moves in front of Guyun. Although few people understood the battle between Guyun and Ziref at that time, everyone could still see that Ziref lost to Guyun. Natsu and others who had already chatted with the dragon soul of the Emerald Dragon Kirkonis in the Dragon's Tomb before, at this moment, they remembered the description and fear of the Emerald Dragon Kirkonis about Guyun, the Dragon Slayer. You have to know that 400 years ago, Guyun alone was able to kill the dragons who dominated the world and wiped them out. Wouldn't it be like wanting to die quickly if you were to be enemies with such an existence? Even Natsu swallowed his saliva subconsciously after hearing Mavis' words. The first generation president. After hearing Mavis' conclusion, Wendy said with an embarrassed look, Mr. 537 Dragon Slayer is so powerful, can we really beat him? Although the first generation president's analysis is very correct, Mr. Dragon Slayer seems to be helping us every time. Wendy, you are right. After hearing Wendy's words, Mavis said hesitantly, indeed, except for the news that the Dragon Slayer killed 1,000 magicians of the Magic Council at the beginning, there was no news of the evil deeds of the Land Dragon Slayer. So it's not appropriate to draw a conclusion so early. Although the Dragon Slayer did show strong subjectivity and purpose after the Eclipse Gate was opened, nothing is absolute. Maybe there is something I haven't thought of. However, no matter what the situation is, we need to be prepared for the worst and can't be too ideal. Speaking of this, Mavis's thoughts were subconsciously a little erratic. Mavis thought of what she had experienced 100 years ago when she had just left Tianlang Island and went on an adventure with Yuri, Warad, and Precht. At that time, because she was too optimistic, she thought that she could get away with it by relying on illusion magic, which almost led to the death of all members by the president of the Blue Skeleton, and Precht's right eye was injured. It was not just the human side that was shocked and horrified by Guyun's series of actions just now. The dragons were also surprised and even horrified because Gu Wei easily beat the Emerald Dragon Kirkonis half to death. In fact, many dragons have recognized Guyun. I remember, isn't this guy the guy that Belzarian protected some time ago? The dragon named Mashiguria, who was closest to Guyun and had just chatted with the Emerald Dragon Kirkonis, looked at Guyun carefully. Yun narrowed his eyes slightly and said, I heard that Leopold was killed by you. Oh? Is this the human who killed Leopold? I see, if it was the human who killed Leopold, it wouldn't be surprising that he had such strength. What's not surprising? A mere human could actually kill a dragon. I'm already so surprised, okay. I think it's a coincidence that this human was able to kill Leopold. After all, Leopold had been seriously injured in order to kill Belzarian, and this human is a little more terrifying than a normal human wizard. Don't be ridiculous. Didn't you see the strength that this human showed just now? It only took a moment for that guy Kirkonis to have his arm cut off, and even I felt a little palpitation from the beam of light. It was definitely enough to hurt us. Yes, this human is indeed different from the human wizards we have seen before. This human definitely has the power that is not less than ours, or even slightly greater than ours. We can't be careless. I think that guy Kilkonis was just careless. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been killed so quickly. After all, if you are careless in front of your own kind, it is not impossible to be killed instantly. Leopold. Oh, I remember now. You are talking about the Earth Dragon. It is indeed called Leopold. After hearing what Martha Guria said, Gu Yun's expression was slightly stunned. After a little confusion, he suddenly realized that Leopold was the first dragon that Gu Yun killed with his life. Gu Yun still remembers the name of this dragon very clearly. After all, it is one of the few first times in his life. And if the wise dragon Belzarian had not caused a serious injury to the dragon named Leopold before dying, Gu Yun estimated that with his immature strength at that time, even if he burst out 90% of his vitality, he would not be able to kill the dragon. At most, he could run away from the dragon and cause a little injury to the dragon. At that time, he was really close to death at the hands of the dragon named Leopold several times. If he had not given up 70% or 80% of his vitality, if it were not for Leopold or the dragon clan's nature of looking down on humans, Gu Wei would have died. Therefore, even if Gu Yun killed countless dragons later, he never forgot the dragon named Leopold. At the same time, Gu Yun also roughly understood the era of the current group of dragons. If he was not wrong, the era of these dragons should be the era when he had just killed the dragon named Leopold 400 years ago. Chapter 82. In this way, everything makes sense. If I remember correctly, Gu Yun remembered that the dragon clan was about to go to war. At that time, the anger between the opposition and the coexistence faction of the dragon clan had reached a peak. In fact, the death of the virtuous dragon Belzarian was the last straw that broke the camel's back. If Gu Yun had not killed the severely injured Earth Dragon Leopold at that time, perhaps the civil war in the dragon clan would have really started. You know, the virtuous dragon Belzarian has many old friends in the coexistence faction. It's just a pity that Gu Yun could only desperately kill the dragon named Leopold in order to protect himself, and because of this incident, the dragon clan was shocked, and the opposition dragon clan temporarily suspended the conflict with the coexistence faction dragon clan. After all, whether it was the death of the virtuous dragon Belzarian or the killing of the Earth Dragon Leopold by humans, it was not a small matter. Later, the pursuit of Gu Yun made Gu Yun in a state of no way up to heaven and no way down to earth for a period of time. Human. After hearing Gu Yun's tone of realization, Mashiguria's eyes narrowed slightly, with a dangerous light flashing in her eyes, and said, I admit that you are different from ordinary human wizards. You have a power that human wizards have never had in history, and you have a power comparable to that of our dragons. You even successfully killed my fellow Leopold with this power that you humans have never had, and have a feat that humans have never had, killing dragons. But don't be arrogant. At this point, Mashiguria roared at Gu Yun. The huge magic power burned and boiled crazily in Mashiguria's body, and huge pressure rose from Mashiguria's body, making everyone present except Gu Yun feel suffocated. Whether in the original work or now, the dragons have never shown their true fighting power in front of humans. Whether it is the 7 dragons in the Great Magic Director Wu or the Black Dragon Aknalaja at Tianlang Island, they are all just playing. At most, the Fire Dragon King Igneel and the Black Dragon Aknalaja in the Tartaros incident in the original book were slightly serious, but even so, it was still not the true strength of the dragon. At that time, the Fire Dragon King Igneel had already died, and the only one-time power left was impossible to exert 100%, and the Black Dragon Aknalaja's strength level dropped greatly because of phase. Finally, when phase was about to explode, he was completely crushed by the Fire Dragon King Igneel, who was not fully exerting his strength. Now, the full-scale explosion of magic power by Mashiguria made everyone present, except Gu Chu, clearly know how terrible their previous idea of fighting with dragons was. Even if the Eclipse Cannon of the Eclipse Gate really existed, even if the Eclipse Cannon could really kill most of the dragons among the 10,000 dragons, what would it matter? Just a few hundred or even a dozen of them would not be something that everyone present could handle. However, among all the people present except Gu Yun, although everyone was very shocked, Fairy Tail was a little different. Although everyone in Fairy Tail was very shocked by the pressure and magic revealed by Mashiguria, the expressions on their faces were slightly subtle. Because everyone in Fairy Tail was very surprised to find that the pressure and suffocation they felt from Mashiguria were far worse than the feeling they felt from Gu Yun before. They were completely different. In the Tartaros time, the suffocation that Fairy Tail felt from Gu Yun could almost kill people directly from suffocation, but Mashiguria. At most, it was a little difficult to breathe, and there was no big impact at all. It's this line that I don't know how many times I've heard it. Guyun looked at Martha Guria who was roaring at him and said lightly, change your style a little bit. After that, Guyun took a step forward. Boom. Everyone felt that the ground they were standing on was shaking wildly, and the surrounding buildings seemed to be buzzing because they could not bear the vibration and they were about to collapse at any time. Zero, seeking flowers. In an instant, Guyun, who was very powerful but lazy in the eyes of everyone, suddenly changed, as if he had become the dragon slayer who dominated the world and created the heyday of human magic as recorded in history. A breath like a prehistoric beast burst out from Guyun, who originally looked extremely lazy, and everyone present subconsciously stopped breathing. This is the most primitive instinct of life. When facing an absolutely strong existence, you dare not move even for a moment. Then, in the eyes of everyone's horror, Guyun disappeared from the spot, appeared above Mashiguria's head, and kicked her directly. Boom! Mashiguria's dozens of meters tall body was kicked away by Guyun in an instant, but in the next moment, Guyun appeared above Mashiguria's head again, and stepped on her directly and decisively. Boom! Even the ground of the central square that had been repaired and reinforced by magic began to crack crazily, and the cracks spread like a spider web, accompanied by Mashiguria's belated wailing. Do you know? Guyun looked at Mashiguria who was wailing crazily under his feet and chuckled. When you are a prey, you have to try your best to please the hunter in order to survive. A rabbit cannot escape from a lion. It can only survive by pleasing the lion. Roaring is also a right only for lions. In front of me, you are like an ant. What qualifications do you have to roar? Looking at Martha Guria who was completely speechless and could only rely on constant wailing to relieve the pain, Guyun spoke word by word, with a cold light in his eyes that he had never seen before. Chapter 83. As Guyun finished speaking, a teeth-grinding shock and bone-crushing sound came from Mashiguria, and all the bones on Mashiguria were completely broken and shattered by Guyun. Although Guyun used magic to fight with others after traveling here 400 years ago, since Guyun has almost studied the magic of immortality and applied it to himself, Guyun's strongest point has become Guyun himself. After all, magic power itself has the function of enhancing vitality and physical fitness. In the past, Guyun just felt a little troublesome when he didn't use it. Now, in addition to hunting prey, Guyun simply wants to show off in front of Erza. Sure enough, punching the flesh is the romance of men. Gu-25 Lo-Yun looked at Mashiguria who was wailing under his feet and chuckled and muttered to himself, then stepped on it again, and Mashiguria's wailing stopped completely. The scene fell into silence again. However, this time, the silence was really complete. Neither humans nor dragons expected that a dragon would die here, and they died before they could even react. Everything happened too quickly. It was only a matter of a moment. Humans who had been prepared for it were a little better. After all, although there were not many people who knew Guyun, there were still many. In addition, those who stayed here were basically of high status, so it was normal for them to know what Guyun looked like. Guyun's title of Dragon Slayer was not a joke, but a real record of battles recorded in history. The Guyun recorded in history was much more perverted than now. There was even historical speculation that the reason why the continent was divided into two was entirely because of the final holy war between Guyun and the dragons. Otherwise, no one could explain why Ishgar was split into two straight lines after the final holy war. Although no one believed this, they were mentally prepared for Guyun's extremely terrifying strength, even surpassing that of the dragons. So not many people on the human side were shocked when they saw Guyun kill the thunder named Mashiguria. There was nothing they could do about it. Isn't it normal for a dragon slayer to kill a dragon? If a dragon slayer couldn't kill a dragon, then it would be abnormal. Compared to the slightly prepared humans, the dragons, who had always been in a high-handed state, were completely confused. They could never have imagined that Guyun actually possessed such a powerful force. This kind of power is probably not something that ordinary dragons can possess. You should know that Mashiguria's strength is not bad among the dragons, especially in terms of defense, but now he was killed by Guyun, a human. Among the dragons, only the Dragon King can achieve this level. You know, the timeline these dragons are in is not long after Guyun successfully killed the first dragon in his life. These dragons still have the impression that Guyun has strength beyond that of ordinary human wizards, but he just got a bargain and killed a seriously injured dragon. Guyun, a mere human, can actually have the strength of the king among the dragons. How could these dragons not be surprised? It's a lie, it's a lie. Martha Guria's breath disappeared, and Martha Guria is dead. I remember Martha Guria seems to be a diamond body, but he can kill Martha Guria so easily. I'm afraid the strength of this human is not what we heard. It is definitely a Dragon King level existence, and even among the Dragon Kings, it is quite strong. Well, that's right. Even if it's a Dragon King, not every Dragon King can kill Martha Guria so easily. It must be the strength of the top Dragon King. Zero, how can a mere human have such strength? Although I don't want to admit it, the problem we need to face now is still very direct. What should we do next? If this human has the strength of the top Dragon King, even if we fight together, there is no possibility of winning. Yes, if it's a weaker Dragon King, we still have some hope, but if it's the top level, I think we should run faster run away. A mere human. Have you forgotten what we were doing before? That's right. This should be a gate that can travel through space. Call all the people on the other side of the gate. Even the top Dragon King can be easily crushed, and we also have a Dragon King. Because Guyun was too strong, and all the dragons around him became timid. They were arrogant, but that didn't mean they were fools. The dragons present could see that Guyun's strength was far beyond their own. Many dragons were even weaker than Mashaguria, who had been killed instantly by Guyun. However, being timid doesn't mean that you won't die. Since the purpose of provoking the dragons from 400 years ago behind the Eclipse Gate has been achieved, it's time to hunt the first wave of prey. With a dazzling sword light flashing, a dragon closer to Guyun had no ability to resist and was cut off by Guyun's sword in the air. The fall of the huge head brought a perfect end to the discussion of all the dragons present. Hey! Guyun looked at the dragons who were completely shocked by him, and waved his hand at the body of Martha Guria who had been killed by him. Then a fist-sized grey crystal slowly floated into Guyun's hand, and he chuckled, "Have you finished the discussion? The hunt has begun." Chapter 84. Facing Guyun's hunting, the dragons that had previously run here through the Eclipse Gate had no power to resist. It didn't take long from the beginning to the end. Except for the two dragons that Guyun let go of, all the dragons that ran to the Eclipse Gate from the world 400 years ago were beheaded. The red blood of the dragons almost turned the entire central square blood red. Guyun also collected a lot of dragon magic crystals, but because of the mixed properties, Guyun did not collect all the dragon magic crystals that were configured with magic spirit power. However, Guyun did not need to worry about this. Just after Guyun beheaded the last dragon in front of all the dragons present, the two dragons that Guyun released finally played a decisive role. The Eclipse Gate, which had been silent since Guyun blasted the emerald dragon Kirkonis back, began to vibrate continuously, as if even a time and space could not conceal the huge movement on the other side. Then a dragon that was much stronger and bigger than the average dragon suddenly flew out of the Eclipse Gate. Along with the flight of this dragon, the dragons of the Water Emperor began to fly out of the Eclipse Gate in an endless stream. Because of Guyun, the dragons that appeared from the Eclipse Gate this time were no longer walking out slowly like before, but flew out of the Eclipse Gate at an extremely fast speed. In just a short period of time, hundreds of dragons were flying in the sky of the Kingdom of Fiori, and there were still dragons flying out of the Eclipse Gate. After all, the proportion of the opposition dragons in the total number of dragons is more than 60%, and there are nearly 3,000 opposition dragons who just gathered together to discuss and hold meetings. And in the era 400 years ago, there were still a steady stream of opposition dragons rushing here. You know, the death of dozens of dragons at one time is not a trivial matter. Well, not bad, there are still wind attributes and fire attributes. There are many dragons with water and earth attributes. Guyun looked at the increasing number of colorful dragons in the sky and nodded with satisfaction, saying, "This way, the dragon magic crystals used to make magic spirit power should be able to be gathered." While Guyun was looking at the flying dragons in the sky, the dragons were also looking at Guyun. Through the two dragons that Guyun deliberately let go, they finally learned that Guyun, a human, had the strength of a dragon king. And even among the dragon kings, he was at the top level. You should know that the Dragon King was a very rare strong man among the dragons. Even the humans who were always looked down upon by the dragons had to pay attention to them. From the dozens of dragon corpses with their heads cut off not far away, it can be seen that Guyun's experience was not false. For a while, the dragons flying in the sky did not act rashly, but still waited in the sky. At the same time, as time passed, the dragons in the sky became larger and larger. After seeing that the dragons did not attack at the first time, Guyun was happy to stand on the ground and wait. After all, if the dragons were killed too early, what if the dragons behind the Eclipse Gate were scared? If it is not very necessary, Gu Yun didn't want to go to the other side of the eclipse gate. After all, Gu Yun couldn't guarantee that after he left, someone would dare to close the eclipse gate. Even if Gu Yun used space magic around the eclipse gate, it would still be the same. Once Gu Yun passed through the eclipse gate, there would be a whole space and time gap, and the magic power combined into magic here would lose Gu Yun's control and become invalid. As for why the attack Gu Yun just released could affect the other side of the eclipse gate, it was completely because it was a magic shockwave without any technical content. After rushing to the other side of the eclipse gate, it was still a magic shockwave, and even if it lost Gu Yun's control, it could still cause great damage. Of course, there are some differences. That is, the magic shockwave released by Gu Yun before passing through the eclipse gate can turn, but after passing through the eclipse gate, it can only attack in a straight line. Therefore, Gu Yun has been trying so hard to catch as many dragons as possible on the other side of the eclipse gate into the space and time where he is. However, Gu Yun was able to remain calm in front of the ever-increasing dragon swarm in the sky, but the others present would not think so. The dragons that almost filled the sky of the capital of the kingdom of Fiori made everyone feel desperate from the bottom of their hearts. Even the fairy tale people who had seen Gu Yun's strength, and even Natsu and Wendy who had listened to the dragon soul of the emerald dragon Kilkonis telling Gu Yun's achievements in the dragon tomb, all subconsciously despaired. Everyone subconsciously had an idea in their minds that even the legendary dragon slayer would probably be unable to cope with so many dragons. Moreover, everyone is not blind, and everyone, Li Hao, can clearly find that the few extraordinary dragons in the dragon group are obviously more powerful and terrifying than other dragons. In the future, Lucy looked at the extremely familiar scene in front of her and muttered to herself with despair, "Are we going to experience despair again? Is this what my future self said about the coming of 10,000 dragons?" After hearing the desperate words of future Lucy, Lucy, who was standing next to future Lucy, said in horror, "There are so many dragons, even if there are not 10,000, there must be several thousand. Can the dragon slayer really get rid of them all?" "Hey! Future me, there is no dragon slayer in your memory, right? The dragon slayer should be able to do it. After all, he is the dragon slayer recorded in history." Chapter 85. As for the fact that Lucy and Lucy in the future can talk, Gu Yun had already removed the space magic that imprisoned Lucy and Lucy in the future when he appeared to remove the illusion magic. In short, today, after 400 years, humans who had long forgotten what the dragon race was except for its name once again felt the terror of the world overlord, the dragon race, 400 years ago. At the same time, just as Gu Yun was confronting the giant dragons that flew out of the eclipse gate, in a very hidden corner of the Ishgar continent, a series of changes also occurred because of the appearance of 10,000 dragons. Dragon! Yes, it's the breath of a dragon. The mountains and forests that had always been very peaceful and serene, at this time, heard an unprecedented roar, and countless birds and animals were present. Following the roar, a huge black figure suddenly spread its black wings behind it, and flew directly into the air, roaring with extreme anger. The body is much stronger than that of an ordinary dragon, and the scales are as dark and deep as a black hole, which makes people feel fearful. On the dark scales, there are extremely strange 600 light blue patterns. This is the black dragon Acnologia, known as the wings of the end in this world. Before, when the white dragon Wislogia and the shadow dragon Skyadrum appeared in the future rogue's body, it was also awakened, but because Gu Yun quickly killed the white dragon Wislogia and the shadow dragon Skyadrum, there was no action, just feeling that it was an illusion. But this time it was different. The 4-digit dragons kept rushing out of the eclipse gate for the black dragon Kunologia. It was really eye-catching. If the white dragon and shadow dragon that emerged from the future rogue's body before were at most equivalent to slightly pushing the sleeping black dragon Acnologia, and barely waking up the black dragon Acnologia from his sleeping state, then, the thousands of dragons that suddenly rushed out from the eclipse gate were like a hammer hitting the black dragon Acnologia directly after he was asleep. Flying in the air, the black dragon Acnologia's heart was filled with unprecedented hostility, and his empty eyes flashed with unprecedented murderous intent. Then the pair of black wings with strange patterns on the back of the black dragon Acnologia suddenly flapped, and the black dragon Acnologia turned into a black rainbow light and disappeared on the spot, flying quickly towards the direction of the capital of the kingdom of Fiori, Milo Alex. What a nostalgic and disgusting breath! The black dragon Acnologia felt the dragon's breath getting closer and closer, and murmured to himself with emotion, "It has been more than 400 years. I, Acnologia, Haven't killed a dragon and drank the dragon's blood for 400 years. Ha 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 ha, dragon. I, acknowledge, am here. I, acknowledge, swear to kill all the dragons in this world. Turn your attention back to Guyun. In just a short period of time, the number of dragons flying out of the Eclipse Gate has reached more than 2,000 and nearly 3,000. The Eclipse Gate, which was originally constantly making noises, has also calmed down a little. The dragons that were holding a meeting on the other side of the Eclipse Gate have almost all passed through the Eclipse Gate and crossed time to come here 400 years later. Human. Until this time, the dragon that was leading the group at the beginning, which looked much stronger than the average dragon, spoke to Guyun. It's really unbelievable to us. You actually have a power that is difficult for even our dragons to possess. But... this scene is really a bit nostalgic. Looking at the dragons flying in the sky of the capital of the kingdom of Fiori, Guyun murmured to himself with a little sigh, completely ignoring the words of the leading dragon in the sky. Last time, it seemed that there were so many dragons flying around in front of me and making a lot of noise. While speaking, Guyun stretched out his arm, and the huge magic power in his body turned into blue cold magic power and began to condense in front of Guyun, and then compressed to the extreme. Then a sword of ice that everyone present was very familiar with, revealing an extremely cold breath, appeared in Guyun's palm. This is... After seeing the ice sword in Guyun's hand, future Lucy thought of the first time she met Guyun in the capital of the kingdom of Fiori. Guyun shattered the Magic Council's strongest trump card, the magic spirit power, in front of her. No, it was not just the magic spirit power that was shattered. Even the space seemed to be shattered by Guyun's sword. Thinking of the space cracks where Guyun's sword passed last time, and the extreme darkness behind the space cracks, future Lucy felt a tingling sensation on her scalp. Before future Lucy could continue to sigh, Guyun casually swung a sword at the dragons in the sky. At this moment, everything seemed to have stopped. Everyone's heart, which had been beating uncomfortably, stopped, and all the air currents around stopped at this moment. Even the world itself was dimmed at this moment and lost its original color. In the eyes of everyone, Guyun was directly the sword that Yun swung out, the sword light that was dazzling to the extreme. Then when everyone came back to their senses again, the world was once again filled with its original colors and returned to normal, and a heavy red rain began to fall in the sky. Chapter 86. The sky that had just been filled with dragons was cleared by more than half as Guyun struck with his sword. Feeling the bloody breath coming towards them, and watching the dragons falling like dumplings in the sky, no one could recover from the huge contrast, and everyone's eyes were dull. You know, when they saw so many dragons coming out of the Eclipse Gate, the people present with slightly weaker minds even collapsed to the ground and cried in despair. For this, sometimes Guyun felt that the dragons were indeed right. Compared with the huge and powerful dragons, most humans were really too weak as ants. Of course, this does not simply refer to the dragons and humans, it should be more extensive, and it is more appropriate to describe it as the strong and the weak. Any weak person is like an ant in front of the strong. For example, the dragons now, who were so powerful, terrifying, and desperate in everyone's eyes, are now like ants in front of Guyun. A casual knife can kill a large number of them. This is all a lie. Erza looked at the dragon corpses falling from the sky and the heavy rain falling on his head and said, "Is the power of the dragon slayer really that strong? Just one sword can cause such an effect. It is indeed as recorded in history, the strongest that cannot be surpassed, Erza." After hearing Erza's sigh, a girl with long snow-white hair, bangs combed to the top of her head, and a pair of deep blue eyes wearing a dress came over and said with a smile, "It's really a relief. Since the dragon slayer is here, I think these remaining dragons should be no problem." The white-haired girl who came close to Erza to talk was Myra Jane Strauss, Erza's childhood nemesis. She had a very bad personality and a hot temper when she was young. She often fought with Erza and they became friends. Yet, it seems that there won't be any more accidents. Erza looked at Guyun who was standing not far from the Eclipse Gate and smiled and replied, "Although I had already made a very exaggerated estimate of Mr. Dragon Slayer's strength, I didn't expect that I still underestimated Mr. Dragon Slayer in the end. Mr. Dragon Slayer is much stronger than we imagined. I even think that the historical speculation that Mr. Dragon Slayer split the continent with 10 swords is not impossible. Hey, I remember Erza is very familiar with Lord Dragon Slayer, right?" Myra Jane looked at Erza and asked with a smile, "I remember that when Erza was in Megunoria, she often went back to pester Lord Dragon Slayer, who was said to have a terrible temper and could die miserably if she was not careful. People like us don't dare to contact Lord Dragon Slayer. I heard that Lord Dragon Slayer is a weird person with a changeable temperament. It would be bad if we accidentally make Lord Dragon Slayer angry. No way. I feel that Mr. Dragon Slayer is quite easy to talk to. Before, when I heard Mr. Dragon Slayer say that he knew my mother whom I had never met, I often disturbed him, and then learned some information from him. After hearing Mirajana's words, Erza was slightly stunned, because in Erza's impression, although Guyun has always been impatient with me, but he is unexpectedly easy to talk to and has a very good temper. He is not like the person described in history, who is a weird, changeable, and extremely dangerous guy. Is that so? After hearing Erza's words, Myra Jane looked at Erza with a little strangeness, and then asked with a little curiosity, could it be because Erza-chan is a special existence for the Dragon Slayer? Maybe it's Erza-chan's father, after all, he knows Erza-chan's mother. Zero, please give flowers. How is it possible? Erza didn't believe it, after all, the time didn't match at all. The Dragon Slayer is a myth that existed 400 years ago. Even if you add the 7 years I was sealed on Tenro Island, I am less than 30 years old. Maybe even my mother's age is not even a fraction of the Dragon Slayer's age. But then again, the Dragon Slayer looks so young even though he is hundreds of years old. It's really enviable. Because Guyun suddenly showed the power of absolute dominance, the people who were a little scared before suddenly became leisurely. Although everyone was covered in blood, what could be better than being able to continue living? Not only Erza and Myra Jane were chatting about completely irrelevant topics, but even others subconsciously started to find topics to chat about in order to ease the fear in their hearts. Anyway, although the 10,000 Dragons invasion incident was full of twists and turns, it is finally over, isn't it? Turn your attention back to Guyun. After clearing out most of the dragons at once, Guyun began to collect his spoils. The magic crystals in the bodies of the dead dragons flew into Guyun's hands and disappeared. Because he is proficient in space magic, Guyun actually has his own portable space, just like the storage belts and storage rings in online novels, which can store personal belongings anytime and anywhere. And the portable space is quite huge, and all the magic crystals in the dragons are Guyun's. Yun stored it in the portable space he created using space magic. Although there are not really 10,000 dragons as imagined, there are almost 2,000 to 3,000 dragon magic crystals, which is enough for him to do research for a long time. You know, the magic power of dragon magic crystals can be supplemented by external forces, otherwise there would not be the second generation of Dragon Slayer. Chapter 87. While Guyun was busy collecting his trophy, the dragon magic crystal, which had roared at Guyun in midair and was lucky enough not to be split in half by Guyun's sword, looked at the surrounding scene with disbelief. How could such a thing happen? What a great power, how could such power exist in this world? It's just a human, how could it have such power? In its eyes, it was already quite surprising that Guyun, a human, could have the power of the top Dragon King level. After all, humans have been as weak as ants for a long time, and they are completely incomparable to the dragons. Even if the so-called 937 taboo magic of the human wizard, the so-called exhaustion of vitality, could not cause much damage to the dragons. At most, they were punched by the consciousness. Unexpectedly, Guyun is much more powerful and terrifying than he imagined. It was only a moment, a trance, and most of the people flying around him and flying in the sky were split in half and killed on the spot. The blood of the people was flying in the sky, and the city on the ground and everything in the city were painted blood red. Everything was so fast that there was no wailing before death. Staring at Guyun who was constantly harvesting spoils, the dragon's heart was constantly surging with unprecedented anger, like a volcano that had been dormant for thousands of years, and was about to usher in a thorough eruption in the next moment. I, respected as the king by my people, am Kleos, the king of red dragons. And I, who am honored as the king and the king of red dragons, am now standing here watching this human slaughter my people and desecrate their corpses. The giant dragon that just roared at Guyun, or the red dragon king Kleos, began to mutter to himself. As he continued to mutter, the face of the red dragon king Kleos began to burst one after another, and his eyes looking at Guyun began to be filled with endless anger and murderous intent. For the dragon race, it is an extreme shame to be slaughtered by the ant humans that they once looked down upon. It is obvious that they have always been ants that have difficulty even in the most basic resistance. When will they be able to step on the heads of the world's overlord dragons? Unforgivable, absolutely not to be avoided, this is a shame that the dragon race has never had. However, at the moment when the Red Dragon King Kleos was about to be overwhelmed by anger and attack Guyun, looking at Guyun turned his back to him, and the Red Dragon King Kleos felt an endless chill in his heart. This chill froze the volcanic anger in the Red Dragon King Kleos' heart that had been dormant for thousands of years and was about to erupt completely in an instant. Not only the Red Dragon King Kleos, but all the other dragons who barely survived Guyun's first wave of attacks all felt an astonishing chill towards Guyun. You know, the dragons are no different from humans in terms of wisdom. Apart from the powerful power that the dragons are born with, the dragons are actually afraid like humans, but compared to humans, it is difficult for anything in the fairy tale world to make the dragons, who are born with extremely powerful power, afraid. And now, Gu Tian is the dragon who knows what true fear is. In just a short moment, Guyun killed more than half of the dragons that escaped from the Eclipse Gate. 4-digit dragons died in an instant. How could it be impossible for the surviving dragons to be terrified? Is this guy really a human? It was just a moment, and all the fellows around him died. Terrible, horrible, the strength of this human is definitely beyond the limit we can handle. Although the facts are in front of us, I still don't dare to believe that humans can have such powerful power. Can they crush animals and monsters like ants? What should we do next? Fight this human? What a joke, fight this human. Haven't you seen the power this human just showed? I'm afraid that in a moment, we can sleep forever like those of our kind. I'm also a little reluctant to fight that human, there is no suspense at all, too strong. Hey! You guy, what are you saying? That human has killed so many of our kind, are we just going to sit here and watch? I don't care about that, I just want to live well now, I don't want to die here. Hey! Guyun didn't even need to do anything, the dragons themselves quarreled over a series of questions from Guyu, and then the giant dragon, who had been completely afraid of Guyun, suddenly flapped a bunch of wings behind him and wanted to fly away, wanting to stay away from Guyun, who was extremely scary in his eyes. Hey, isn't it good to live a little longer? After feeling that a giant dragon was about to fly away, Guyun put down the things in his hands slightly, looked at the giant dragon running away and chuckled, why do I have to do it so quickly? The next moment when Guyun was about to do it, Guyun frowned slightly, and then turned around slightly to look in the opposite direction. Then, in the horrified eyes of everyone, a huge blue-white light column flew from a distance, completely covering the giant dragon that was about to escape. Boom! Accompanied by a violent earthquake, everything returned to calm again. Chapter 88. The giant dragon that was completely frightened by Guyun and ran away was instantly killed by the beam of light just now. Then a roar filled with great anger came from the sky, the roar of a dragon. Oh! It seems that an extraordinary existence has come. Guyun waved his hand at the dead dragon and summoned the dragon magic crystal. He looked at the dark figure that appeared in the sky from nowhere and chuckled. It is much stronger and more robust than ordinary dragons, even ordinary dragon kings. The dragon scales on its body are as deep and dark as black holes, and there are strange patterns on the scales that make people feel ominous. There is no doubt that this is the only fully dragonized dragon slayer in history. 400 years ago, after Guyun froze himself, he killed all the remaining dragons. He is called the Black Dragon Aknologia, the King of Dragons. At the same time, Ziref called it the source of evil. It is a dragon that destroys everything and can only bring despair and pain. Every time the Black Dragon Aknologia appears, it means that the end of the era is coming, so the Black Dragon Aknologia is also known as the Black Feather of the End, the Wings of the End. The terrifying attack that killed a giant dragon in 1 second was released by the Black Dragon Aknologia who had just arrived here, and it killed a giant dragon that was only concerned with escaping. Aknologia, who had an inexplicable hatred for the dragons, would not let the dragons run away from him. To be honest, the Black Dragon Aknologia really did not expect that today, 400 years later, the world would still have so many dragons surviving in the world. As for the survival of the dragons, the Black Dragon Aknologia absolutely could not tolerate it at all. The philosophy of the Black Dragon Aknologia's life was to completely kill the dragons. Then the Black Dragon Aknologia began to attack the surviving dragons crazily without caring about anything. If the Black Dragon had not been killed by Guyun before, the Black Dragon Aknologia may not dare to be as arrogant as it is now. After all, thousands of dragons are no joke. They can already eliminate the gap in strength to a certain extent. There is no way to do this. Although the Black Dragon Aknologia should be considered to be a being that surpasses all dragons in terms of strength, the strength of the Black Dragon Acknowledge is limited compared to the top Dragon King. But if it is the current situation, then the situation is different. Although there are still many dragons left on the scene at this time, the strength of the Black Dragon Acknowledge is not just talk. There is a reason why it seems so weak in Tartaros and not as strong as imagined in the original book. In the original book, the reason why the Black Dragon Acknowledge in the Tartaros chapter does not seem to be as strong as imagined is entirely because the White Legacy Magic Pulse Bomb Faith is about to be launched. After all, the effect of the White Legacy Magic Pulse Bomb Faith is to destroy all the magic power in the world. People like Guyun who are not affected by the White Legacy basically do not exist. Guyun and Fairy, the normal magicians or strong people in the Tale world, become stronger in a completely different way. The magicians in this world have always followed the natural way to become stronger, while the magic power in Guyun's body is plundered and completely labeled with Guyun's own label. It can be understood that Guyun's body is a world and the outside is another world. The two worlds are completely unrelated and unconnected, so the White Legacy phase cannot affect Guyun's inner world. In short, the Black Dragon Acknowledge will also be affected by the White Legacy phase. That's why the power and magic power were suppressed to the lowest point when the White Legacy phase was about to be launched, and in the end, even the Fire Dragon King Dragneel, who could not use his full power, could not beat it. Now, because of seeing a large number of dragons, the Black Dragon Acknowledge, who was furious and fully fighting, directly ignored Guyun and others standing on the ground, and directly began to attack the dragons in the sky frantically. In this way, the Fiori King, who had just been repaired not long ago in the aftermath of the battle between the Black Dragon Acknowledge and the Dragon Group, became very bad again. The only thing that was fortunate was that, because they knew they would fight with dragons, the Kingdom of Fiori had already asked the civilians in the capital to take refuge. So there were no casualties. On the human side, the originally relaxed atmosphere became tense again because of the arrival of the Black Dragon Acknowledge. Especially the main members of Fairy Tail, they had a very deep impression of the Black Dragon Acknowledge. On the Tianlang Island 7 years ago, no matter how hard they fought, they could not hurt the Black Dragon Acknowledge. It has to be said that this matter is really quite desperate. Isn't this the Wings of the End recorded in the Apocalypse, the Black Dragon Kunologia? Damn, why did this guy appear here at this time? Makarov was driving the Black Dragon Acknowledge on the ground, and he subconsciously felt a little fear and disgust in his heart. Makarov had no good feelings towards the Black Dragon Acknowledge, who almost killed him and the children in the guild. However, while he hated it, Makarov was also a little curious about why the Black Dragon Acknowledge would fight with his group of dragons. Could it be that the Black Dragon Acknowledge was a friendly force on his side? Subconsciously, Makarov had this thought in his mind. Not a friendly force. Mavis, who had always stood beside Makarov, seemed to know what Makarov was thinking, and explained with a serious face, anyone can become a companion, but the Black Dragon Acknowledge is not. Chapter 89. Mavis, who has loved reading since childhood and is very interested in learning knowledge and applying it, knows things that many people don't know. After all, sometimes things recorded on the surface need to be deduced from personal understanding to a deeper level. For example, Xiang.Reddies, who has ancient documents in the Blue Pegasus Tri-Men's team, can rely on ancient documents to query all the recorded information and knowledge in the world, but if Xiang.Reddies himself does not have this subjective consciousness, even the ancient documents will not be able to do anything. The general description is that K is needed to solve a problem, but K must be found, and Xiang.Reddies, who has ancient magic, only sees the surface K and does not use the knowledge he knows as flexibly as Mavis. The era 400 years ago was not only a chaotic era, but also an era where epics and myths coexisted. In the era 400 years ago, there were not only great heroes one after another, but also extremely evil sinners one after another, and there were also dragons who never took humans seriously. Therefore, Mavis has been very interested in the era 400 years ago since she was a child. 10 organic golds went to various libraries to find out if there are any materials about 400 years ago. Among them, Mavis naturally knows about the 3 most famous mythical beings 400 years ago. Ranked first, the myth among myths, the Dragon Slayer. Almost no one knows the name of the Dragon Slayer, or those who know the name of the Dragon Slayer seem to have never been prepared to announce the name of the Dragon Slayer to the world, but just relying on the series of shocking achievements of the Dragon Slayer, it can be remembered forever in history that in a certain era, there was an existence called the Dragon Slayer who swept the world and was invincible. Then there is the ancestor of the Black Wizard Zeref and the Black Dragon of the Wing of the End Acknowledge. I won't say much about the ancestor of the Black Wizard Zeref for now. In fact, the ancestor of the Black Wizard Zeref is more mysterious than the Dragon Slayer. The reason why he is remembered by history is simply because of the demon created by the ancestor of the Black Wizard Zeref. Every day, he shouts that everything is for Zeref, who likes to stir up trouble and kill people everywhere, is the ancestor of the Black Wizard. It is impossible for Zeref, the ancestor of the Black Wizard, not to be remembered. In fact, there is almost no history about Zeref, the ancestor of the Black Wizard. Mavis knows more about Acknowledge, the Black Dragon of the Wing of the End. After all, compared with the unknown Dragon Slayer and the ancestor of the Black Wizard, there is still a lot of information about Acknowledge, the Black Dragon of the Wing of the End. If Mavis really wants to say who she knows best among the Dragon Slayer, the ancestor of the Black Wizard and the Wing of the End, it is undoubtedly Acknowledge, the Black Dragon of the Wing of the End, who has the most deeds and the most obvious purpose. The Wing of the End, the Black Dragon Acknowledge. Mavis looked at the Black Dragon Acknowledge who was madly attacking the dragons in the sky, and a complex look flashed in her eyes. She said, "He hates the dragons very much and also despises humans very much. He is dismissive of them. The reason why he didn't attack us but kept fighting with the dragons in the sky was simply because we were too small and didn't want to pay attention to us like ants. He is also a human being, a dragon slayer 400 years ago, but now he is extremely disdainful of humans. I have to say that this is really a complicated thing." Wait. After hearing Mavis' explanation, Makarov interrupted Mavis and said in disbelief, "First generation, you said that the Black Dragon Acknowledge of the Wings of the End is a human. And a dragon slayer from 400 years ago." At this time, the fairy tale people who were still watching the wonderful battle between the Black Dragon Acknowledge and the dragons in the sky also shifted their attention. All looked at Mavis in disbelief. "You know, there are 4 dragon slayers in fairy tale, Natsu and Wendy and Gajeel and Laxus. How could they not care about what Mavis said, that the Black Dragon Acknowledge is a human, and a dragon slayer from 400 years ago? Yes, what's wrong?" Looking at the fairy tale people who were all looking at her with surprised expressions, Mavis said with a strange look, "The information I read in the library before was indeed recorded like this. The winged black dragon of the end, Acknowledge, was originally a human. After slaughtering too many dragons and bathing in too much dragon blood, his teeth slowly changed into fangs, and dragon scales gradually grew on his body. That's about it. To be honest, I was also very surprised at the time. I didn't expect that the winged black dragon Acknowledge was actually a human and a dragon slayer." After confirming it from Mavis again, the people of Fairy Tale were instantly in disbelief. If the winged black dragon Acknowledge was a dragon, it would be easier to think about it. After all, those who are not of my kind must have different hearts. But if the winged black dragon Acknowledge was originally a human and a dragon slayer, then it would be very confusing. It is very confusing why the black dragon Acknowledge attacked them when they were on Tianlang Island. The battle in the sky is still going on fiercely. Although the strength of the black dragon Acknowledge is indeed very strong compared to the dragons, there is still a dragon king on the dragon side. The red dragon king Klios dare not fight with Guyun, but he can fight with the black dragon Acknowledge. In this way, the red dragon king Klios and the black dragon Acknowledge was entangled, and other dragons were entangled nearby, and for a moment, there was a stalemate. Chapter 90. The red dragon king Klios and the black dragon Acknowledge turned into a red rainbow light and a dark rainbow light respectively, colliding crazily again and again in the sky of the capital of the kingdom of Fiori. Bang! 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 The two shocking forces collided again and again, making deafening roars. It was obviously just the simplest collision, but it gave everyone present a feeling of the end of the world. But, it's still a clear gap. After harvesting all his trophies, the dragon magic crystal, Guyun stood on the ground and watched the battle in the sky, smiling and muttering to himself. The reason why we can hold on is because we are holding our breath. When this breath is completely released, it will be the end of everything. Although they are dragon kings, the gap between dragon kings is also very huge. While speaking, Guyun slightly turned his body and glanced at the location of Fairy Tale not far away. Seeing Natsu excitedly watching the battle of 537 in the sky, he chuckled and said, "Even if it comes to this, you are not going to come out. Or is it because I am here that you are not going to come out?" Originally, Guyun thought that after the Black Dragon Acknowledge came, the giant dragons in Natsu, Wendy, Gajeel, and others would not be able to help but show up and fight with the black dragon Acknowledge. Unexpectedly, even in this situation, the dragons such as the fire dragon King Dragneel hidden in Natsu and others are still not going to appear, as if they are watching the show from the sidelines. What Guyun didn't know was that at this time, the fire dragon King Dragneel and the sky dragon Grandine and other dragons in Natsu and others' bodies were also stunned, and had no idea what was going on. They also didn't know the origin of the black dragon Acknowledge that suddenly appeared and fought with the dragons. It was different from the original story that the black dragon Acknowledge chose to attach to Natsu and others and travel through the Eclipse Gate to 400 years later. The 10 times the fire dragon Lord Dragneel and others traveled through the Eclipse Gate completely unilaterally because of Guyun. Back then, because Guyun completely exploded and no longer had any mercy on the dragons and some special reasons, the fire dragon King Dragneel and others chose to travel through the Eclipse Gate. Or to avoid Guyun and come to an era where Guyun did not exist. Then, it is like this now. Not only did Guyun not die, but he was jumping in front of him, and there was also a black dragon of unknown origin who attacked the dragons crazily. In short, the dragons in Natsu and others' bodies are now confused and have no idea what happened. In addition, with Guyun, the dragon slayer, here, they just stay in Natsu and others' bodies. Anyway, even if they really come out, they can't beat Guyun. Compared with 400 years ago, Guyun has become more terrifying. At the same time, the battle in the sky has finally changed. The red dragon King Kleos, who has been fighting and colliding with the black dragon Acknowledge with all his breath, finally can't hold on and just stopped above Guyun and others. Why? The red dragon King Kleos looked at the black dragon Acknowledge facing him not far away and roared in disbelief, "Why do you, as a fellow race, want to slaughter our fellow race?" Although it is a stalemate, in just this short battle, more than a dozen dragons have died because of the black dragon Acknowledge. Even with the help of the surrounding dragons, it is only a matter of time before the red dragon King Kleos fails. Of course, the reason why the red dragon King Kleos was a little weak was because he paid 10% of his attention to Guyun, who was watching the battle on the ground when fighting with the black dragon Acknowledge. After all, Guyun just killed 4-digit dragons in front of the red dragon King Kleos. How could the red dragon King Kleos feel at ease to fight another dragon in front of Guyun? Otherwise, according to Guyun's estimation, the red dragon King Kleos should be able to hold his breath for a little longer. However, the black dragon Acknowledge did not respond to the roar and questioning of the red dragon King Kleos, or disdain to respond. Although Kleos is also a dragon king among the dragons, let alone compared with the black dragon Acknowledge, he is far behind the fire dragon King Ignoru, and is not qualified to let the black dragon Acknowledge speak. The black dragon Acknowledge responded to the red dragon King Kleos by opening his mouth. A huge amount of magic power gathered in the mouth of the black dragon Acknowledge. Then 10 blue-white beams of light rushed towards the direction of the red dragon King Kleos. After seeing the attack of the black dragon Acknowledge, the red dragon King Kleos quickly avoided it. The last ones who faced the roar of the black dragon Acknowledge were Guyun and others standing on the ground. For the black dragon Acknowledge, it didn't matter how many human deaths his attack would cause, and it didn't care whether Guyun and others would die because of his attack. The black dragon Acknowledge only cared about killing the dragon. "Hey, I was just going to watch the show, but I didn't expect to be affected." Forget it, it's actually meaningless. Let's clean up quickly and see what's so special about the magic spirit power extracted from the dragon magic crystal. Guyun looked at the blue-white light column getting closer and closer to him, and then Guyun waved his hand casually. In the eyes of everyone who had already been shocked and numb, the roar of the black dragon Acknowledge instantly turned into starlight and disappeared. As long as it is not an attack with time and space attributes, Guyun really doesn't even need to take action. Then Guyun once again swung a sword at the dragon group in the sky, including the black dragon. Acknowledge. Chapter 91. Guyun's sword swinging action looked very slow, and everyone could clearly see the moving trajectory of the ice sword. However, when everyone around realized that Guyun had started to attack, the ice sword in Guyun's hand had already drawn a beautiful arc in the air. A few extremely fine ripples began to appear where the ice sword passed, and the wind attribute magic power gathered and compressed madly at the tip of the ice sword and gushed out. As Guyun completely swung the ice sword in his hand, a crescent-shaped green sword light with an extremely sharp breath emerged from the ripples in the air. At the same time, with the emergence of the green sword light, the world once again lost its original color and fell into a pause. Whether it was the shaking earth, the dragon corpse falling from the sky, or the consciousness of all the people or dragons present, they all stopped at this moment, and everything was frozen at this moment. In this world that has lost all colors and is only grey, only Guyun himself, the green sword light he swung out, and a touch of blue in the sky still have color. At this time, Guyun also reacted, and his eyes narrowed slightly, looking at the blue in the sky that was extremely eye-catching in the surrounding grey colors. The blue pattern on the black dragon acknowledge that makes people feel ominous and weird. This is quite interesting. Guyun looked at the strange pattern on the black dragon acknowledge and murmured to himself with a little curiosity, it can still retain its original color at this time. It seems that it is not just a decorative pattern. But, what is the use of this unusual pattern? Before Guyun could continue to think, the strange blue pattern on the black dragon acknowledge flashed as the blue sword light approached. The black dragon acknowledge, who was frozen at the beginning, regained his consciousness. Then the black dragon acknowledge suddenly felt an extreme palpitation in his heart at this time. The black dragon acknowledge noticed the blue sword light that was constantly thinking about himself and the surrounding dragons approaching. Moreover, the black dragon acknowledge could also feel the extremely rich breath of death from the blue sword light. Subconsciously, the black dragon acknowledge wanted to flap the wings of the end on his back to leave here, but the next moment before flapping, a more dangerous breath emerged in the heart of the black dragon acknowledge. It was as if his neck was tightly pressed by an invisible big hand, and the extreme suffocation was coming. Unable to flap his wings to dodge, this blue sword light exuding the breath of death completely locked him in. There was no other way except to resist. Under the pressure of death, with the help of the strange blue pattern on his body, the black dragon acknowledge was completely furious. Destruction! Destruction! Destroy everything in front of you completely. Crazily mobilize the magic power in the body, constantly thinking about opening the roaring mouth to pour out, madly condensing and squeezing, and as the black dragon acknowledge madly mobilized the magic power in the body, the blue pattern on its body began to bloom with unprecedented light. Ranjudeo's dazzling blue-white light ball was the final condensation of the black dragon acknowledge. Looking at the cyan sword light that was constantly approaching him, the black dragon acknowledge roared madly. How could I, acknowledge, die here? The black dragons, roar! A blue-white light column that shook the world and even caused a few cracks in the grey world came out of the black dragon acknowledge's final roar and penetrated the sky. Then in an instant, the blue-white light column collided with the cyan sword light. Boom! As the blue-white light column and the cyan sword light collided, the grey world that was frozen by Guyun's slashing was shattered, and what appeared in everyone's eyes was a world of only blue, white and cyan. Similarly, as the grey world was shattered, the people whose consciousness was frozen also regained their consciousness at this moment, and with the recovery of consciousness, they felt suffocated. The three extremely bright colors of blue, white and cyan suffocated everyone who regained consciousness, and at the same time, the crazy roar of the black dragon acknowledge echoed in everyone's ears. Bang! 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 The blue pattern on the black dragon acknowledge began to flicker continuously, and the flickering rhythm was constantly accelerating, and then cracks appeared one after another, and began to spread wildly like a spider web. Finally, in everyone's eyes, the blue-white light that had been fighting with the blue light shattered, and then the blue sword light swept through the sky, including the bodies of all the dragons. The sky once again began to rain blood, and one dragon after another fell from the sky. Of course, the desperate efforts of the black dragon acknowledge were not without effect. At the last moment when the blue patterns on the black dragon acknowledge's body were all cracked, the blue-white light barely made the blue sword light swung by Guyun deviate a little bit, so among the many dragon corpses falling from the sky, there was only one black arm. Just a little distance allowed the black dragon acknowledge to survive the sword light swung by Guyun at the cost of breaking one arm. Well, there is also the blue pattern with cracks all over his body. Chapter 92. The dragon blood kept falling from the sky, almost covering the entire capital of the kingdom of Fiori. The dragon corpses made the dragon clan look so sad. Once upon a time, it was the overlord of the world. At this moment, the only thing left in the sky was the black dragon acknowledge. And even the legendary black dragon acknowledge was in a very bad state. In order to survive Guyun's sword, the black dragon acknowledge paid a huge price and barely survived. Staring at Guyun who was standing on the ground and looking at him with a smile, the black dragon acknowledge seemed to think of something, and then his empty pupils shrank suddenly. You are. The black dragon acknowledge looked at Guyun's familiar figure and said with some difficulty, Dragon Slayer. It's amazing, after 400 years, you are still alive. How could the Black Dragon Acknowledge forget the existence of Guyun, the Dragon Slayer? You know, 400 years ago, he kept picking up leaks behind Guyun and finally successfully transformed into a dragon and became the Black Dragon Acknowledge. At the same time, the Black Dragon Acknowledge who had been following Guyun to pick up leaks also knew very well how terrible the strength of Guyun, the Dragon Slayer, was. The historical predictions of Guyun's strength were just the tip of the iceberg. The reason why the Black Dragon Acknowledge did not discover the existence of Guyun before was simply because he was too disdainful of humans, so he did not pay attention to the humans on the ground from the beginning. Even if there are a few Dragon Slayers in the Fairy Tail Guild and the Sword Bite Tiger Guild, how can the Dragon Slayer's breath compare with the dragons flying in the sky? The most important thing is that the Black Dragon Acknowledge really didn't expect Guyun to still be alive in this world, and there is no sign of aging at all. Although after Guyun was unsealed and awakened from the ice coffin, the world was full of news that Guyun, the Dragon Slayer from 400 years ago, had reappeared, but who made the Black Dragon Acknowledge not live in human society at all. In short, after a series of coincidences above, the Black Dragon Acknowledge fell into such a situation. Facing Guyun, the Dragon Slayer, it is absolutely impossible to win. After knowing what kind of existence is standing in front of him, the Black Dragon Acknowledge directly gave Guyun an invincible label absolutely impossible to be defeated by himself. In addition, all the dragons around had been completely wiped out by Guyun, so there was no point for Black Dragon Acknowledge to stay here any longer. Even if there were a few Dragon Slayers among the group behind Guyun, it was the same. Even if, under normal circumstances, Black Dragon Acknowledge would not hesitate to deal with these Dragon Slayers when he met them, but today was a special case. Although Black Dragon Acknowledge liked to destroy, it did not mean that Black Dragon Acknowledge was a fool. The reason why he acted as he pleased before was simply because no one could control him. In fact, until 200 years ago, Black Dragon Acknowledge was quite honest. Black Dragon Acknowledge was not sure whether Guyun was still alive, so after completely pushing the dragons into the abyss, he found a place to live in seclusion. It was not until 200 years ago that he felt that Guyun should have passed away that he started to wander around, and he had been wandering around until he met Guyun today. Thinking of this, the arm behind the Black Dragon Acknowledge suddenly flapped, and made the same choice as the god Anxur Ramel and Zeref's body in the Tartaros world. The best strategy is to run away. In the surprised eyes of everyone including Guyun, it flew away. Run away. Guyun was slightly stunned when he saw the Black Dragon Acknowledge flying a long distance in an instant. He didn't expect that the Black Dragon Acknowledge would run away directly like the god Anxur Ramel and Zeref's body. When Guyun saw the Black Dragon Acknowledge bursting and roaring wildly in front of his attack, he thought that the Black Dragon Acknowledge was ready to fight him to the death, but it turned out to be so disappointing. In fact, not only Guyun was stunned, but even the people who had become numb because of a series of events before were also surprised. No one expected that the Black Dragon Acknowledge would run away so easily. You know, Guyun cut off his arm in front of everyone. I say, is this really the Black Dragon Acknowledge we know? Natsu, who had been in a daze, saw the Black Dragon Acknowledge running away without hesitation and shouted in surprise, "The roar just now made me feel like I was burning. I say, running away is the right choice." After hearing Natsu's shouting, the future Lucy beside him looked at Guyun and said helplessly, "After all, if you fight against the Dragon Slayer, I'm afraid there is no hope of winning even a little bit. Instead of dying meaninglessly in the hands of the Dragon Slayer, it's better to run away and continue to live. If you can continue to live, who doesn't want to continue to live?" At this point, looking at the dragon corpses scattered everywhere around, the future Lucy's eyes became confused again, thinking of the corpses of her companions one by one in her memory, and even if she was desperate, she had to fight desperately in front of thousands of dragons, and finally died in the roar of a dragon. Natsu. Now, all the dragons that killed her companions died here in a miserable state. And the companions who had become corpses and could no longer laugh or joke with her were still standing beside her alive. Thinking of this, Lucy in the future said softly in the direction of Guyun, "Arigato, the Dragon Slayer." Chapter 93. Guyun didn't care about the movement behind him. He casually collected the dragon magic crystals in the group of dragons he had just killed into his personal space. Then Guyun looked at the Black Dragon Acknowledge that had long disappeared from his sight and chuckled, "Run. How could you run away from me when you don't even know space magic?" As Guyun's voice fell, the space in front of Guyun began to ripple slightly, and then everyone around was surprised to find that the figure of the black dragon Acknowledger appeared in a small space in front of Guyun. The black dragon Acknowledger that appeared in this small space was flying at a very high speed, but no matter how fast it flew, it couldn't fly out of the range of this small space. Pure power can indeed crush everything. Even when the power is strong enough, even the so-called time and space have no calendar for you. Guyun looked at the black dragon Acknowledger in front of him, which was still flying rapidly, and didn't know what situation he was in. When the black dragon Acknowledger in 08 said lightly, but when this pure power meets a stronger power than itself, the result is also absolute. It will be absolutely crushed by a stronger existence than itself, without even the slightest resistance. Speaking of this, Guyun directly stretched his arm into the small space where the black dragon Acknowledger was projected, and directly grabbed the tail of the fast-flying black dragon Acknowledger in the stunned eyes of everyone around, and then pulled his arm out of the small space and swung it to the ground. Boom! A huge roar sounded, and the black dragon Acknowledger, which had obviously flown a long distance, was forcibly grabbed by Guyun's tail and pulled back. Even after being thrown to the ground by Guyun, the black dragon Acknowledger was stunned. He had already run far away, but why did his tail suddenly tighten, followed by a sharp pain, and finally a huge roar? I am back. Is this the power of the Dragon Slayer? Looking at Guyun standing in front of him and smiling at him, the black dragon Acknowledger felt desperate from the bottom of his heart. How can he play when he is being stared at by the Dragon Slayer? Just lie here and wait for death. The black dragon Acknowledger is no longer ready to struggle. Not only the black dragon Acknowledger was stunned, but everyone around Guyun was also stunned. They were completely numb to the powerful strength shown by Guyun. They didn't expect Guyun to show such a weird method. He directly pulled the black dragon Acknowledger out of another space out of thin air. Does this mean that in front of Guyun, he can't even run away? It's really terrible. Die. Makarov looked at the scene in front of him and said seriously, obviously, his strength is so terrible, but his methods are so weird and changeable. I'm afraid there is really no one in the world who can be his opponent. After seeing the terrible strength and weird and changeable methods shown by Guyun, Makarov is now really a little doubtful whether his own guild's secret magic lumen. Starlight, Fairy Heart is Guyun's opponent. Can the so-called endless power really defeat Guyun? Although the Fairy's Heart is said to be a secret magic and the final and strongest trump card of fairy tale, it has never been used since it was created, so Makarov is not really sure whether the so-called endless power of the Fairy's Heart can really defeat the Dragon Slayer, a powerful existence that completely exceeds people's cognition. Even until now, Makarov has not understood what it means to have endless power by using fairy tale, what kind of 10 shapes are shown in it. And even Mavis is not clear about the Fairy's Heart. Perhaps the only one who knows is the genius who created the Fairy's Heart, Precht, the second-generation president of fairy tale, who has long died in Zeref's hands. Yet, after hearing Makarov's sigh, Mavis, who had been watching Guyun thinking, also nodded and agreed. I didn't expect that the two myths in history were so vulnerable in front of the Dragon Slayer. Although the Fairy Heart is the strongest and final trump card of our guild, the consequences of using it are also unknown. Endless power is just endless power. We don't know how to control the so-called endless power if we can't use the eyes to control it. I think it won't be the opponent of the Dragon Slayer. No matter how dangerous the situation was before, I didn't make up my mind to use it. It's because of this. At this point, Makarov sighed softly and said, if you only have power but don't use it, I'm afraid it will bring very bad results. Endless power is like a devil, which makes people yearn for it and fear it at the same time. However, in general, this incident has finally come to an end, little Makarov. Mavis looked at Makarov with a bitter face and said with a smile, who can tell what will happen in the future? We just need to cherish the present now. As long as we cherish the present, we will definitely have a future. I think there will be nothing for us to do next. The Great Demon Director martial arts is over. We won the first place and all the debts we owe can be paid off. It's time to celebrate. Chapter 94. However, although they were discussing about celebrating, no one on the scene made any move. After all, Guyun was still there. If Guyun didn't move, then everyone around him wouldn't dare to move at will. There was nothing they could do about it. Guyun had just shown a terrifying strength far beyond their cognitive limit in front of everyone. It was probably Erza from the Fairy Tale Guild who could act a little more naturally. After all, after the Tartaros incident, Erza was the one who had been in contact with Guyun for a while without fear of death. Erza's understanding of Guyun was probably the highest among all the people present. In addition, Erza inexplicably felt a sense of security from Guyun, so Erza acted very naturally when facing Guyun. At most, they were shocked by the powerful strength shown by Guyun, not as horrified as others. They turned their attention back to Guyun. Guyun didn't care whether the people around him were waiting for his next move or not, as long as they didn't disturb him, it was fine. Looking at the black dragon Acknowledge lying motionless on the ground, or rather, looking at the strange blue patterns on the black dragon Acknowledge that were already covered with cracks, Guyun touched his chin and began to think. In that moment just now, Guyun could clearly feel that a force that definitely did not belong to the black dragon Acknowledge burst out from the black dragon Acknowledge. Although it only burst out for a moment and then withered, the power that burst out at that moment was still quite strong, otherwise it would not have survived Guyun's attack. Even if Guyun did not use his full strength at all, even if the black dragon Acknowledge still paid an extremely heavy price. However, this still made Guyun quite interested, and things became more and more complicated. Just like the so-called Angsur Ramel god who appeared in the previous incident of the gate of the mansion and temporarily took over Ziref's body. The world behind fairy tale may not be as simple as described in the original book. That's why Guyun didn't kill the black dragon Acknowledge immediately after pulling it over, but carefully looked at the blue pattern on the black dragon Acknowledge. It's just that maybe because he had consumed all his energy in the fight with Guyun just now, Guyun didn't find anything different from the blue patterns on the black dragon Acknowledge. Thinking of this, Guyun smiled a little helplessly and muttered to himself, "What, am I entangled here?" After that, Guyun casually grasped the black dragon Acknowledge's heart in the void. Then the breath of the black dragon Acknowledge was constantly weakened and disappeared in the perception of everyone around him. Guyun crushed the heart of the black dragon Acknowledge out of thin air, killing the black dragon Acknowledge. Then, the huge black dragon Acknowledge in everyone's eyes began to change dramatically. The body of several tens of meters tall began to shrink continuously, and the fangs began to change and gradually turned into the teeth of humans, and the black scales on the body slowly turned into the darker skin of humans. At the same time, there were blue patterns on the skin of the dragon. Finally, a person with waist-length white hair and a very ferocious look appeared in front of everyone. There was a very beautiful blue necklace on the chest. There was also a pendant-like thing in the center of the blue necklace, which could be turned over. This made Guyun pause a little while preparing to let the dragon magic crystal in the black dragon Acknowledge's body break out of the body, and he opened the necklace pendant on the neck of the black dragon Acknowledge with a little curiosity. As expected, there was a group photo inside, a group photo of the black dragon Acknowledge and another little girl who looked 70% similar to the black dragon Acknowledge. Seeing this, Guyun sighed softly. He gently closed the necklace pendant in his hand, threw it at the black dragon Acknowledge, and then waved in the air. A pillar of fire emitting a scorching breath wrapped the black dragon Acknowledge and the necklace pendant on its body. Another poor man. Guyun looked at the pillar of fire that was rushing straight into the sky, and put away the dragon magic crystal in the black dragon Acknowledge's body, and then muttered to himself in a trance, "But, I'm numb." Of course, the pillar of fire that was emitting a burning breath and shooting straight into the sky completely dissipated. When the black dragon Acknowledge and the necklace pendant on his body were completely reduced to ashes, Guyun had already disappeared from everyone's sight. In short, it was indeed as Mavis said, and this incident finally came to an end. Although the capital of the Kingdom of Fiori was once again destroyed because of this incident, and it was destroyed very thoroughly, the king of the Kingdom of Fiori still insisted on holding an extremely grand celebration banquet. Fairy Tale, who won the first place in the Great Magic Director Martial Arts Conference, was naturally the protagonist of this celebration banquet. Although many places have become different from the original book due to the appearance of Guyun, at least there is not much difference between this celebration banquet and the original book. After that, the Kingdom of Fiori, Qian Zhao Zhao, began the reconstruction work in a grand manner. The damage to the capital did cause a lot of losses to the Kingdom of Fiori, but overall, the Kingdom of Fiori still made a lot of money. After all, there are many Gu the dragon corpses that Yun was too lazy to take were left in the capital of the Kingdom of Fiori. You know, there are treasures everywhere on the dragon, not to mention thousands of dragon corpses. And all the dragons were killed by Guyun with one blow, and the preservation is quite perfect, which is definitely enough for the Kingdom of Fiori to build a city that is hundreds of times more prosperous than before. Of course, the Kingdom of Fiori is just thinking about it in their minds. These are all Guyun's spoils of war. They dare not use them casually. At most, they help Guyun collect them and use some scraps. However, even the scraps are enough for the kingdom of Fiori to repair the capital that has been destroyed by the aftermath of the battle and make it more prosperous. Chapter 95. After the Great Demon Director Martial Arts Conference was completely concluded and the celebration banquet of the Great Demon Director Martial Arts Conference was held, the kingdom of Fiori began a major renovation work. After all, the capital is the face of a country, and it cannot be sloppy. The Fairy Tale Guild also returned to Magnolia after receiving the first prize of the Great Demon Director Martial Arts Conference. Being able to pay off the debts owed, all the members of Fairy Tale were in a very good mood. At the same time, the situation is similar to the original book. After knowing that the Fairy Tale Guild won the first place in the Great Demon Director Martial Arts Conference and made Magnolia proud, the head of Magnolia called on the citizens of Magnolia to rebuild a new guild building for the Fairy Tale Guild. This made the Fairy Tale Guild, who were already in a very good mood, even happier. You know, although the first prize of the Great Magic Director Martial Arts Competition is indeed very generous, Fairy Tale has also owed a lot of debts in the past 7 years, especially the debt owed to the Dusk Ghost, a lone shark wizard guild. So even if the first prize of the Great Magic Director Martial Arts Competition is really very generous, there will not be much money left after paying off the lone shark owed to the Dusk Ghost, and it is definitely not enough to repair a huge and spectacular guild building like the one in front of you. However, not everyone in Fairy Tale is happy. Compared with the happy guild members around him, Makarov, the guild leader, became a little silent and worried at this time. President Myra Jane, who had always been more careful, also noticed the situation on Makarov's side at this time. Looking at Makarov with a serious expression, Myra Jane asked in a strange way, "What happened? President, you don't seem to be in a very happy mood." "Hey." After hearing Marajana's slightly curious question, Makarov, who had been in deep thought, suddenly came back to his senses. Looking at Myra Jane who was looking at him curiously, he laughed dryly, "Nothing happened. I was just thinking about something. After all, this time, it's not simple at all, isn't it?" After saying that, Makarov pretended to be relaxed and took the lead to run to the newly renovated guild building, leaving Myra Jane with a slightly worried expression on her face. Because she had always been a bar girl in the Fairy Tale Guild Hall before, Myra Jane knew her own golden-haired Makarov very well. Under normal circumstances, Makarov would never show such a thoughtful and serious expression just now, which means that something must have happened, but Makarov is not convenient to tell her. Since it is not convenient to tell her, Myra Jane can't continue to ask, and can only put this matter in her heart for the time being. Anyway, Makarov is an absolutely reliable existence for everyone in the guild, isn't he? Myra Jane will never think that the matter is far more serious than she imagined. Except for Mavis, the first-generation president who just followed Makarov, no one noticed that after leading the way into the guild building, Makarov's originally disguised old naughty expression instantly fell, and became more serious than ever. "First generation, I should have thought of it long ago," Makarov said to Mavis in a serious manner from an angle that Fairy Tale could not see. "Perhaps an unprecedented war will begin soon." After returning to Magnolia from the celebration banquet held by the Kingdom of Fiori, Makarov suddenly thought of an unprecedented serious matter, that is, the Magic Council has been in a state of suspension since the Tartaros incident. Neither the speaker nor the councillors have been selected, and even the army has been completely defeated in the battle with Tartaros, leaving only some remnants. The Ishgar continent and the Western continent have never been so harmonious. In the past, the Magic Council has always been at the forefront, so Makarov basically does not need to worry about this matter. But now the Magic Council is completely in a scrap state. The magic elf power used to deter the Western continent in the past cannot be used in a short time. The power of the Western continent, the Albaraz Empire, will never ignore the Ishgar continent, which is almost defenseless and like a pile of loose sand. For the Albaraz Empire in the Western continent, this is a great opportunity for invasion. Thinking of this, Makarov took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Things suddenly became extremely bad. Mavis also fell silent beside Makarov. Compared with the optimists of most other members of the Fairy Tale Guild, both Makarov and Mavis are very mature and rational, and they understand very well how cruel this world is. Now it is not a question of whether the war will come, but when the battle will come. Yet. Mavis looked at Makarov and nodded gently, saying, "War will indeed come soon. Sheep can't negotiate with hungry wolves, little Makarov." As Mavis' voice fell, Makarov suddenly became silent, opened his mouth to say something, but found that he had no way to refute Mavis' words. That's right, sheep can't negotiate with hungry wolves. Just like that, the quiet atmosphere lasted for a long time, forming a completely opposite contrast with the noisy scene outside the guild. Then Makarov's eyes became firm, and he said to Mavis, who had been watching him quietly beside him, "First generation, I still want to try. After all, once the war really breaks out, there will be no way out for both sides. I want to persuade them, even if the persuasion fails in the end, it can delay time." Chapter 96. For now, let's ignore Makarov's affairs. Anyway, with the end of the great magic director Wellay in the kingdom of Fiori, everything has returned to peace. However, this time, because the great magic director Wellay caused too much noise, in order to avoid causing a commotion, the enforcer of the Magic Council, Doranbolt, modified the memories of most of the people involved. The news that the dragons, who had disappeared for 400 years, had descended on this world again was too much, and the Eclipse Gate was the dark magic of Zerev, the ancestor of the dark magician, and it was not suitable for publicity, so the news about what happened in the great magic director Wellay was completely suppressed. Except for the high-level officials of the Kingdom of Fiori and the members of the Fairy Tale Guild, all the other people present at the time had their memories modified by Doranbolt. As for why the memory of the Fairy Tale Guild was not modified, of course it was because Doranbolt was a member of the Fairy Tale Guild. And sometimes if not enough people tell the truth, then even if it is the so-called truth, no one will believe it. For example, Natsu said outside that he saw thousands of dragons, and the family would just treat it as a joke. No one would really believe what Natsu said, even if what Natsu said was true. In short, after the great magic director Wu incident, Guyun did not become popular again in the world. On the contrary, because the news has never spread, it has gradually been forgotten by people. After all, whether it was Guyun's confrontation with the Magic Council in the Kingdom of Fiori or the slaughter of the dragons that ran out of the Eclipse Gate, they were completely suppressed by Doranbolt's memory magic. There was no way around it. The former involved the face of the Magic Council. The 10th store was even more involved in the dark magic of Zerev, the ancestor of the dark magic expert, the Eclipse Gate and the dragons. Even the Tartaros incident was completely suppressed by Doranbolt of the Magic Council. After all, the Magic Council's performance in the Tartaros incident was not very glorious. The Magic Council, which supervises the entire Ishgar continent's wizard guild, was actually wiped out by a mere dark guild Tartaros, including all the senior council members, including the speaker. Although this happened entirely because the former speaker of the Magic Council, Crawford, betrayed and defected to Tartaros, it is even more embarrassing to say that the former speaker of the Magic Council actually betrayed and defected to the enemy. In summary, Doranbolt, who has not yet recovered his memory and still has a certain degree of affection for the Magic Council, is trying his best to use memory magic to suppress the impact of these incidents as much as possible. The reason why the Albarez Empire on the Western continent has not made any obvious moves until now is also because Doranbolt suppressed these incidents very hard. The Albarez Empire is not sure whether the Magic Council has really collapsed completely. After all, the Ishgar continent is generally quite normal. Things naturally became simpler afterwards. In the short term, the Albarez Empire in the Western continent was not sure whether the Magic Council in Ishgar had completely collapsed, so there was no obvious action. It just kept sending people to Ishgar to gather intelligence. The world was still as calm as a pool of stagnant water. Guyun was also very calm. After collecting enough dragon magic crystals, Guyun started his own research. He didn't care about anything in the outside world. As long as it didn't disturb him, Guyun didn't care whether the outside world was collapsing or cracking. Guyun constantly tried to use dragon magic crystals of various attributes to extract higher quality magic spirit power, and use higher quality magic spirit power to increase the transformation speed of the magic power in his body, and transform from liquid to solid as soon as possible. 0. Asking for flowers 0. In the process of continuous attempts, Guyun finally extracted the magic spirit power he expected through the dragon magic crystals of different properties. At the same time, the magic spirit power extracted from the dragon magic crystals is indeed as expected at the beginning. The quality of the magic spirit power is far superior to that of ordinary magic spirit power, which is about 4 to 5 times the quality difference. Originally, it took 1 or 2 years to completely transform the magic power in Guyun's body from liquid to solid after absorbing the magic spirit power. Now, after Guyun absorbs the high-level magic spirit power extracted from the dragon magic crystal, it only takes a maximum of 3 months to make the magic power in his body reach the level of transformation into a solid state. 00 Very good, very good. Next, if I just keep this state, then I will be able to usher in a new transformation in 3 months. After absorbing the high-level magic spirit power extracted from the dragon magic crystal, Guyun was very happy to feel the magic power in his body boiling wildly and concentrating little by little, which was obviously turning into a more viscous state. As the quality of magic power continued to increase, Guyun could clearly feel that every cell in his body was jumping wildly. Every cell was passively strengthened because of the improvement of magic power. You should know that Guyun's body had long been strengthened to the limit because of the magic of immortality, which means that Guyun was constantly surpassing his limit every minute and every second. This wonderful feeling is absolutely unprecedented. Although it is unknown how much Guyun's transformation will be after the magic power in his body completely changes from liquid to solid in 3 months, one thing is known, that is, if anyone interferes with Guyun during this period, then he will definitely die in a rhythmic manner. Of course, Erza is an exception. Chapter 97. Time passed by bit, and every day Guyun could usher in new changes. The magic power in his body became more and more viscous because of the continuous absorption of high-level magic spirit power. After about a month of keeping this way, the magic power in Guyun's body had become extremely viscous. Although the effect of high-level magic spirit power had been greatly overestimated, the actual effect still surprised Guyun. It took only more than a month for the magic power in Guyun's body to reach a critical point of liquid state. If it continues like this, it will not take too much time at all. At most 1 month, or even half a month, the magic power in Guyun's body can completely become solid. Now with the same 313 move or even the same magic power, the destructive power and attack strength caused by Guyun have increased by nearly 70%. You must know that Guyun's strength was already invincible, and now it has become 70% stronger on the basis of invincibility. This is simply terrifying. And not only did his strength become stronger, Guyun's body also continued to improve due to the continuous improvement of the purity of magic power. His body was much stronger than he was a month ago, and his lifespan was greatly extended again. After all, when one aspect of the body becomes stronger, it will passively lead other aspects to become stronger. For example, if the physique is strong, the strength will also increase, and if the strength is increased, the speed will also increase to a certain extent. However, just as Guyun was concentrating on practicing to make himself stronger, the seemingly peaceful world also ushered in some unusual changes. Although Makarov did not choose to disband the Fairy Tale Guild as in the original work, Makarov also chose to set Erza as the acting president and went to the Albarez Empire in the Western continent alone to negotiate. Of course, everyone in Fairy Tale did not know what Makarov was doing. At most, they thought that Makarov wanted to abdicate. After all, Makarov was already very old and had always considered the issue of abdication. At the same time, because future Lucy was not killed by future Rogue as in the original book, she once again joined the Fairy Tale Guild. As for why future Lucy did not answer the question of the future, it was of course because Guyun did not choose to destroy the Eclipse Gate. After all, if the Eclipse Gate was destroyed, all the dragon magic crystals obtained by Guyun would disappear, so Guyun collected the Eclipse Gate of the Kingdom of Fiori before leaving the capital of the Kingdom of Fiori. As long as it is placed in one's own personal space, the Eclipse Gate will never be destroyed. Similarly, the large number of dragon magic crystals obtained by the Eclipse Gate will naturally not disappear because the Eclipse Gate is destroyed. On the other hand, the Magic Council also began the reorganization of the speaker and the counselors. Because they learned the lesson that Tartaros easily wiped out the entire Magic Council's top management last time, this time the speaker and the counselors of the Magic Council were considered first on the 10 wizard saints. There is no doubt that as the 10 strongest wizards listed on the Ishgar continent, these 10 wizards are still quite terrifying, at least they are definitely not the existence that Tartaros can easily destroy. Makarov, the president of the Fairy Tale Guild, is also in the list of counselors to prepare this time, but it is a pity that because Makarov went to the Albarez Empire of the Western continent alone and unnoticed, the Magic Council has never been able to contact Makarov and can only cross Makarov out of the list of counselors to prepare. Everything seems to be as calm as it seems on the surface, but how many people can notice the turbulence in the dark? One night after Guyun practiced and absorbed the power of high-level magic spirits for a month, a girl who looked a little simple and a little like a witch fell unconscious at the door of the Fairy Tale Guild. And next to this girl, there was a yellow duck that looked a little weird and kept calling for help, attracting Erza and Natsu who were still chatting in the guild building. Magnolia, Fairy Tale Guild Building. After an unknown amount of time, the girl who had fainted at the entrance of the Fairy Tale Guild building slowly regained consciousness. She looked at the unfamiliar environment and Erza and others who were looking at her with concern, and she was confused. This. The girl who was dressed like a shrine maiden looked at Erza and others and asked a little confusedly, "Who are you?" Because she fainted suddenly, the girl didn't know what happened. "You're awake." Erza smiled gently when she saw the girl waking up. "Just now you fainted at the door of our guild because of your weak body, so we carried you in. Drink some soup first. You must have not eaten for a long time." 1.5 After hearing Erza's words, the girl looked at the emblems on Erza and everyone else around her and hesitated a little, but after seeing the bowl of soup in front of her and feeling her body weak, she still opened her mouth slightly and said, "Thank you." After that, the girl stopped talking and quietly held the yellow duck in her arms and drank the soup. Looking at the girl drinking soup quietly, Erza and others standing not far away felt a little strange, because as long as the emotional intelligence was online, then they could feel that this girl seemed to have a sense of alienation from Erza and others. You know, Erza and others helped this girl, but this girl felt very reluctant to accept Erza and their help. Chapter 98. If Guyun was here at this time, Guyun would be able to recognize the identity of this girl instantly. This girl is one of the very few characters in the original book who has lived for more than 400 years, the Phoenix priest Heartfilia, who gained eternal life by drinking the blood of the Phoenix and lived alone for more than 400 years. In the end, she lost her eternal life because she defeated the Phoenix. In the original book, although it seems that immortality is possible, it seems that every existence that achieves immortality has paid a huge price. For example, Zoro, the ancestor of the Black Wizard, was cursed by the god Angsur Ramel while having endless time. Although Phoenix priest Heartfilia gained eternal life by drinking the blood of the Phoenix, her life is also completely related to the Phoenix. When the Phoenix dies, Heartfilia will naturally be buried with it. There is another one that is not so certain, that is the Black Dragon Acknowledge 08. Although dragons have a long lifespan, they are also only about 1,000 years old and will also age. However, the Black Dragon Acknowledge has no signs of aging, and it is also possible that it has gained immortality. As for what price it paid, it is unknown. Anyway, it can't be a good thing, otherwise the Black Dragon Acknowledge would not give people an ominous feeling. In short, just like this, Phoenix priestess Heartfilia and Erza and others came into contact, and because of Heartfilia's resistance to fairy tale people at the beginning, Lucy became interested and curious about Heartfilia. In addition, the place where Heartfilia wanted to go was very dangerous, so after a series of things, Erza, Natsu, Wendy, Lucy and others decided to help Heartfilia go to the place where Heartfilia wanted to go. The only difference in this book is that Erza has been appointed by Makarov as the acting president of the Fairy Tale Guild, so Erza cannot leave work casually, so the team accompanying Heartfilia this time is also different from the lineup in the original book, with one less Erza and one more future Lucy. At the same time, in Veronica, a small principality on the Ishgar continent, there is also a person who is very interested in the half-piece of Phoenix worn by Heartfilia. That is Stuart Crofts, the prince of the Veronica Principality. 400 years ago, it was the king of the Veronica Principality who coveted the Phoenix Stone in the village where Heartfilia lived and led the army to massacre the village where Heartfilia lived and rob the Phoenix Stone worshipped by the village of Heartfilia. The reason why Heartfilia hated wizards so much was because her village was massacred by the wizard army of the Veronica Principality. However, after 400 years, Heartfilia had long forgotten why she hated wizards so much. It must be said that it was a very sad thing. This can also be regarded as a disadvantage of obtaining eternal life through the blood of the Phoenix. It seems that memories will continue to pass and forget with time, and only the memories of the last few decades or hundreds of years are retained. Originally, the Phoenix Stone has been treasured by the Veronica Principality for many years. The kings of successive generations have never taken the Phoenix Stone seriously. After all, there has been no news about the other half of the Phoenix Stone. Over time, they have forgotten about it and just stored the half of the Phoenix Stone that their ancestors robbed from the Heartfilia village as an ancestral item. However, the Veronica Principality, which had almost completely forgotten about the Phoenix Stone, once again received news of the Phoenix Stone, which made the Prince Steward of the Veronica Principality unable to sit still. Hey, the Phoenix Stone that can grant eternal life. In the palace of the Veronica Principality, a blonde man with a feminine and delicate appearance was looking at the Phoenix Stone that had been treasured for generations in an extremely dazed manner. This was the Prince of the Veronica Principality, Stuart Crofts. Looking at the half-piece of phoenix stone blooming with strange colors in his hand, Stuart Crofts murmured to himself, as long as you can become complete, you can gain eternal life, and let my handsome face exist forever, right? This is such an exciting thing. In this way, under the control of the Prince of the Veronica Principality, the Veronica Principality began to operate with all its strength. It's not just this. In addition to fully operating the power it has, it also contacted the Ruby Guild, which is more famous among the Dark Guilds, for assistance. In short, it is like getting the Phoenix Stone on Ekalia at all costs. Thinking of this, Stuart Crofts, the Prince of the Veronica Principality, laughed wantonly, as if he had seen himself making the Phoenix Stone complete and gaining eternal life. Even if it meant starting a war for this, it would not hesitate. Boom! Accompanied by a roar, a piece of the 007 Fairy Tale Guild building that had just been repaired by the citizens of Magnolia was destroyed, and the guild hall was directly turned into a ruin. Because they did not expect to be attacked at all, Erza and others who were discussing in the Fairy Tale Guild hall were all seriously injured. After all, Fairy Tale is the strongest guild in the kingdom of Fiori, and they must go all out. At the same time, a shadow took advantage of the injuries of the Fairy Tale people and directly abducted the bewildered Ekalia and fled away. Ha 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 ha, is this the legendary strongest guild in the kingdom of Fiori? A yellow-haired flat-headed man in green military uniform looked at the scene in front of him and sneered, it's really embarrassing. Oh my, it's really embarrassing. After hearing the sneer of the man in green military uniform, a woman with a big mouth and luxurious clothes beside him also echoed. And the man with dark blue hair standing between the two just stood quietly without saying anything more. However, no one noticed that someone who had been practicing peacefully in the ground frowned and slowly opened his murderous eyes. Isn't it good to be alive? Chapter 99. The four-man team that destroyed the Fairy Tale Guild Hall was the core members of the Ruby Guild, the Dark Wizard Guild. The leader was the low-profile blue-haired Tendo Pain Dist, Canon who used magic gun magic, and Cordinetta who used the same disguise magic as Erza. It is worth mentioning that Cordinetta can remove the disguise magic on others, and has a crushing advantage over Erza who also used disguise magic. As for the black shadow that took Ekalia away in the chaos, it was Chase who used shadow magic. It must be said that the appearance rate of shadow magic in the fairy tale world is still quite high. Naturally, the people in fairy tale could not just watch the people of the Ruby Guild take Ekalia away. So, after understanding what happened, the fairy tale people quickly had a fierce battle with 3 of the 4 Ruby people song, but they were quickly suppressed. Erza, who has the best fighting power, was restrained by Cordinetta. The other 2 members of Ruby were also strong. In addition, because of the sudden attack at the beginning, most members of Fairy Tale Guild suffered a lot of trauma. And today itself is not a special holiday. Most members of Fairy Tale Guild went to other places to complete the tasks after accepting the task commission, so Fairy Tale was suppressed by only 3 people from Ruby. Natsu is famous for being 50-50. It doesn't matter whether the opponent is strong or not. The outcome is unpredictable. Ha 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 ha, what fairy queen Erza. Cordinetta looked at Erza who had no power to resist in front of her and laughed unscrupulously, in front of me, the so-called S-class wizard fairy queen Erza is just an ordinary woman, it's really ugly. Are you guys the ones who are making a lot of noise here? Just when Cordinetta was about to continue to mock Erza who had no power to resist in front of her to satisfy her vanity, she heard an extremely indifferent voice coming from beside her. As the indifferent voice fell, Cordinetta felt a palpitation that she had never felt before suddenly rising from the depths of her heart, followed by an extreme feeling of powerlessness and suffocation. Feeling the extreme suffocation, Cordinetta turned around slowly with a stiff face and looked in the direction of the indifferent voice just now, and then a figure with white hair appeared in her sight. Seeing this figure that suddenly appeared near her, Atinita said with difficulty, "Who are you?" "Mr. Dragon Slayer." Before Cordinetta finished her words, Erza, who was a little embarrassed not far away, shouted out with a look of surprise. Although Guyun was said to be a very cruel and brutal existence by everyone, Erza did not think so after getting along with Guyun for a while. Erza was very surprised to see Guyun at this time. After all, Guyun would appear at this time, naturally ready to come to help her. Or as she had said many times before, Erza simply felt that she would feel very at ease with Guyun around. This feeling was very wonderful for Erza. Although Fairy Tale Guild also gave Erza a very warm feeling like home, because of the strength and status, what Erza felt from Fairy Tale was a sense of responsibility to not let down her companions. The pure feeling of peace of mind was almost never felt. In addition, Guyun also knew about his mother, so Erza still had a special feeling for Guyun, a person who was not a companion but had a more reassuring feeling than a companion. Dragon Slayer. Is it the Dragon Slayer who killed 1,000 magicians of the Magic Council in seconds? After hearing Erza's surprised voice, the other two guys not far away couldn't stand it, especially the low-profile version of the leader, Tiandeo Pain Dist, whose pupils shrank suddenly. Because Doran Bolt used the power of memory magic to suppress the spread of the news, the outside world still felt that Guyun was the image of being able to kill 1,000 magicians in seconds even if this news has been outdated for a long time. Looking at the three ruby people who were suddenly facing a great enemy, Guyun was about to say something, and then sighed. Although Guyun was a little angry that Coordinata beat Erza, and was also very angry that his practice was interrupted, but Guyun found that he really didn't want to say anything to the three ruby people. At this time, Guyun suddenly understood the Black Dragon Acknowledge. It's really boring to talk too much to ants. After all, why waste so much time talking when you can just step on them to death? Perhaps the only difference between Guyun and the Black Dragon Acknowledge is that the Black Dragon Acknowledge is purely destructive. Guwei is simply targeting those who hinder his existence. Forget it, there's nothing to say, just disappear. Thinking of this, Guyun looked at Coordinata, Wang's good, who was looking at him with horror, and said lightly. Considering Erza's presence, Guyun just snapped his fingers lightly. As the sound of the snap fell, a ripple suddenly appeared under Coordinata's feet, and then it evolved into a black hole, swallowing Coordinata, who had been unable to move for a long time, in front of everyone present. A hole. What did you do to Coordinata? Canon, who was originally horrified by Guyun, became extremely ferocious after seeing Coordinata disappear. When a person is forced into a desperate situation, he will either give up struggling completely or die completely. It is obvious that the disappearance of Coordinata has completely aroused Canon's nerves. Magic Penetration Canon. Chapter 100. Compared to the huge magic power of ordinary wizards, Canon surged out of his body. The magic guns that had been floating behind Canon began to reorganize continuously, and finally formed a magic cannon with a radius of about half a meter, which directly fired a pure white beam of light at Guyun. Then, in Canon's ferocious and somewhat desperate eyes, this pure white beam of light did not even approach Guyun's 1 meter radius and collapsed into the most primitive magic factor. Of course, even in this case, Canon's courage to attack Guyun is a very commendable thing. After all, most people at this time will only be dazed and terrified, and will not think of struggling, resisting, and attacking. For example, the Black Dragon acknowledges some time ago, after being caught by Gu Chu at 220, he did not resist until his death. Although a large part of the reason is that Guyun left too deep an impression on the Black Dragon acknowledge 400 years ago. How is it possible? How is it possible? Even the so-called Dragon Slayer can't be this far. After watching his ultimate move collapse without even Guyun getting close, Kanan roared madly, and began to squeeze and overdraw his body desperately, attacking Guyun madly. One after another, the magic cannon continued to bombard Guyun, but each one dissipated halfway. This is Guyun's new ability after he has been absorbing high-level magic spirit power to make the purity of the magic in his body reach the peak of liquid. The extremely high-quality magic makes the magic used by low-purity magic basically ineffective against Guyun. For example, in the current situation, Kanan's continuous ultimate move collapsed without even Guyun getting close, or it was restored to the most primitive magic factor, and then absorbed by Guyun. After all, Guyun can even absorb the high-level magic spirit power refined by the combination of dragon magic crystals. There is no problem in absorbing most of the magic released by gaseous magic or even magic that is inferior to gaseous magic. Just like Dragon Slayer can ignore magic of the same attribute, Guyun is almost equivalent to Dragon Slayer with all attributes, and can swallow and absorb any magic directly. The reason why the dragon race was so powerful in the past was that the quality of magic power was so high compared to that of humans that human magic had no effect on the dragon race at all. So, ants are ants. You will never know how much you are worth, and you will always be blinded by your own desires. Looking at the Canon who was attacking him crazily and the low-profile version of Tendo Pain beside Canon who had no intention of attacking him from the beginning, he waved his hand casually, and once again summoned 2 black holes to completely swallow the 2 guys from the Ruby Guild. Then the world suddenly became quiet, and everyone in the Fairy Tail Guild stared at Guyun in a daze. Although everyone in the Fairy Tail Guild knew how terrible Guyun's strength was, every time Guyun showed a little bit of combat power, everyone would be stunned. Because no matter which time, No one understood Gu Yun's move. After dealing with the 3 people from the Ruby Guild, Gu Yun just stood there and fumbled his chin and hesitated for a while, then waved to the damaged Fairy Tail Guild Hall, and used material reconstruction to restore the Fairy Tail Guild Hall to a brand new look. After all, Gu Yun also knew that Erza had become the acting president of the Fairy Tail Guild, so Gu Yun helped Erza repair the building destroyed by the 3 Ruby Guild members. After everything was done, Gu Yun turned around and prepared to use space magic to leave here. Mr. Dragon Slayer, can you please wait for a moment? After Erza saw that Gu Yun seemed to be about to leave, she didn't care about what happened to the 3 people in the Ruby Guild, and quickly said to Gu Yun, "Can you help me, Mr. Lu Longe? One of my companions, Ekalia, was just kidnapped by their companions. I remember that the Dragon Slayer had a magic that could capture people from a long distance during the Great Demon Director Martial Arts Conference. I wonder if you can help us get Ekalia back." After this trip, Lucy and others had already recognized Ekalia's identity as a companion, and the same was true for Ekalia. Even before being kidnapped, Ekalia had decided to end her aimless wandering and join the Fairy Tail Guild once she found the other half of the Phoenix Stone. So even if Ekalia did not join the Fairy Tail Guild, Erza has already regarded Ekalia as a companion of her guild, and no wizard guild can just watch her Dark Wizard Guild kidnap Renlei from her guild. Coupled with the inexplicable sense of security in Gu Yun, Erza decided to ask the Dragon Slayer, who always seemed very mysterious, powerful and indifferent, for help. Ekalia. Although it was Erza's request, Gu Yun had to admit that what Erza said attracted his attention a little. You know, Ekalia is one of the very few people who have achieved immortality in the fairy tale world, and she is also the heroine of the theatrical version in the original work. Gu Yun still remembers the name Ekalia. And 400 years ago, when Gu Yun was facing the crisis of running out of vitality, he also thought of the Phoenix Stone. After all, this is the best way to achieve immortality in the fairy tale world, although the premise is to be strong enough to crush the phoenix. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.